This is S4 with your host, Eric Cooper.
Greetings, folks, and welcome to S4, where we talk about the real issues involving paranormal and current events, coming to you live from the S4 headquarters in the heart of the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. We also cover topics such as disaster and terrorist response and preparation, and veterans issues as appropriate. So tonight, it's the 29th of March. It's time for our March Roundtable with a phenomenal panel. Roundtable is when we get together and our guests bring 3 questions to the panel to discuss anything paranormal, conspiracy, or current events, and we'll discuss our views on those topics. So with us tonight, we have Mike Crow, investigator with Myth Chasers Investigations, Barrie Gaunt, Kentucky MUFON director and host of Into the Fire, Eric Mitchell, also a host of Into the Fire, and Greg Cameron, author of many awesome, phenomenal books, UFO investigator and founder of Beyond Presidential UFO website. So, how are we all doing tonight?
Perfect.
We're good.
Doing
Great.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Oh, it's been, I don't know, life is completely turned upside down, as I know all of you guys know.
It's awful.
It is, but I'm going to bring the first question out. What are you guys doing to kill the time, to isolate, or, are you finding new hobbies? I know, Grant, you're probably writing more books. What are you guys doing? For me, it's gardening. For me, we're looking at self-preparation and things like that. Having 2 kids, it's crazy because the kids don't have school, so you have to keep the kids occupied. So, yeah, life's just, this will go for the 2020 is going to go into the history books for damn sure. But what are you guys doing to fill the isolation?
What isolation? I'm still going into the office. I own a tax preparation firm.
Okay.
And we're not closed. We're one of the ones that were given permission to be open. We're doing drop off,
right,
and isolating from the customer, but we're still running because we're producing the checks and getting the people their money.
Right. Okay. So my mate Izzy, she'll be in the chat room later tonight. She has her own tax business as well, but a lot of her clients up here in the mountains are like, we don't want to come in. So she put it on hold, but I know they did an extension till July, I believe it is. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all the competition here is still open in Lexington, so I'm open.
Seriously.
To receive, we're not, face to face, but
right.
We're still doing taxes.
Okay. So are you using the video? Are you doing a lot of your clientele with face-to-face video feeds, or?
Well, I actually use Facebook Messenger a lot. but they will either email me the information or they'll fax me the information, and we can do it that way. And a lot of them just come by and drop it off and wait out in the car, and I'll work it and take it out to them.
Right on. Right on.
So I mean, it's not much different. They're just not sitting in front of me.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and I do stuff from almost 50 states anyway. So
okay.
We've been used to doing it like this.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, she's an EA, so she's found that a lot of her clientele are needing her for the EA status more than the actual tax portion.
Right.
So, Eric, what are you doing to kill the isolation?
Actually, not much of my life has changed whatsoever. I do the same things. I'm empathic, so I isolate myself on a daily basis anyway. But you know, honestly, the only thing that's changed is a little bit of my thought process. I worry about certain people I care about very much that might be susceptible to what's going on out there. I worry about the human ignorance when it comes to this kind of thing. I think that's more dangerous than any virus we're ever going to have. Right. And man, I'm just working on my book and documentary, and we're opening up the case a little bit to see how loud she screams. And, yeah, I mean, everyday life, why panic over this kind of thing? Yeah, we could worry, but yeah, it's giving in to the panic is not a good idea.
No, it's why panic over things you can't control?
Exactly.
Absolutely. And Grant, what do you
been up to? Absolutely nothing's changed for me. I do this 24 hours a day, and I've done it for over a decade, full time, just working on it. I do an interview almost every single day. Do a lot of interaction with people. I've got a bunch of books going, and I move around. We have this situation isn't as bad here where I am in Canada. There's we've sort of flattened the curve, and the only cases we have are snowbirds coming back into the province. But so I move around. We know to stay away from people and stuff like that. But I'm still out every day. I walk 3 times a day, and I do interviews and do a lot of research, and absolutely nothing's changed for me.
Right on.
I wish.
You wish.
I like, for me, it's not even ignorance of this. It's the fact that I forget. Mm-hmm. I forget. I'm trying to keep myself busy, so I'm doing different things around the house, fixing things, and I'll realize this would go a lot quicker if I have this.
Right.
And I reach for my keys immediately. It's not even a thought. I'm gonna hop in the car and go get it, and then I'm like, I'm not allowed.
Right.
I feel like I'm 10 years old again, and I did something bad. I'm grounded.
Jaylin. So Jaylin's our token kid in the group.
Hello.
What are you doing since you're out of school?
Well, tomorrow I have school, online school. It's going to be really boring because it's school. But lately I've been, doing what a normal kid would do. Play video games and stay inside and do chores around the house because, you got to do that unless you want rats and cockroaches and everything. But don't read books because, read books, but I don't read books because I'm just like that.
You need to read books.
I'm a savage. But
I've got some books you can read. Might scare you, but yeah.
Yeah, I've been staying inside a lot, helping my dad around the house and outside, doing a lot of yard work because that's fun.
When the sun allows us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on snow watch, over 2,000 feet.
Yeah, I heard that.
So it's not going to come down here, but
it'll be rain by the time it gets here, and
yeah,
of course it's Washington. We're going to get more rain.
Yep. All right, so Barrie, what's your first question tonight?
Oh, my first question tonight is, we'll make it easy. What's the main focus when doing any type of research or investigation for the panel?
Focus on, like, you mean, could you go into a little bit more detail what you mean by which focus? Sorry, we've got a guy who's been chainsawing for 5 days straight. He took a 1-day break. Before that 5 days, he's been going for about a month.
Probably looks like Goldie Hawn on Overboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where he's getting all the logs.
Seriously, it'll be 2 o'clock in the morning and that chainsaw will go off.
Maybe it's the Evil Dead guy.
I'm hoping it's logs.
Oh yeah, that too. You are on Cape Horn.
What do you mean by the focus? Like,
Well, you know, when you first go out to an investigation, with some of the investigations, and we all do different investigations and research. So we're always like, for me, I want the truth, right? So I'm always going to look for the truth. I'm going to try to do that through the investigation and try to find out what it's about. And then I want to go into it deeper of what is causing that problem that we're having as far as through the research and the investigation, and see where we're going to be able to help a client, or, you know, it's just like with the UFOs right now. I'm trying, like a son of a gun, we are getting more reports on Skylink than crazy, but then all of a sudden some of the people will say, okay, here you have Skylink coming by, but all of a sudden it turns into a triangle and they start going in another direction. Well, I got news for you. That's not Skylink, so you just can't take it and go, okay, I'm sitting here since I can't go out and do anything and I'm in the house, you just can't go by the norm and say everything's Skylink, because you have to look at it and do it a little bit different. And I'm just looking for that focus of what are you looking for in an investigation, and how do you guys feel? I mean, everybody's got their own reasons why they do what we do, right?
Oh, absolutely. Grant, what's your thoughts when it comes to the research side?
Okay, I've been doing it for 45. I've been doing it for 45 years. My whole attitude changed February 26, 2012, when I had a noetic experience where it was basically put in my head. And since then, I've changed to the nature of reality in terms of looking for people who've gotten noetic experiences. And I've had 2 major experiences. I had one in 2012, 2017. And what I would say, based upon what I was told, is that you got to get the basics right. You can't be making a bunch of false assumptions. And I'll give you an example. In 2012, I was basically told this whole thing has got to do with consciousness. So I completely shifted. I was chasing around the head scientist of the CIA. I was chasing around the President of the United States and all that kind of stuff, because I basically, the same as probably all of you, I had a sighting in 1975. I had a number of sightings, a whole raft of them. I was in pretty close 5 times, and I wrote a manuscript back then. Nobody would publish the manuscript. Nobody could care less about my sighting stuff. And so all I was concerned about in 1975 was somebody's got to know what the hell I saw. And so that's why I chased the Canadian government. I investigated the guy who ran the Canadian government program and the Canadian government. And I went after the former president of Penn State University, who knew what was going on. Then went after the president of the United States. And I kept on going to these higher and higher levels. You know, Jim Semivan at the CIA, Ron Pandolfi at the CIA, Kit Green at the CIA. I followed all these guys. I was the guy who first introduced the Avery, all these inside guys who are working on this thing. And in 2012, I had the download experience that basically put 3 pieces of the puzzle together that I had that basically said, this has all got to do with consciousness. That's the bottom line of this thing. And in 2017, I got a real shift in how you deal with this kind of stuff, in that I was given 24 things, one after another. It happened on the street. I was madly writing this stuff down as it came into my head, and it basically said, when you're doing, like, as you're pointing it out, the investigation, when you're doing the investigation, you got to get your basics right. So the first thing came to my head, is the world made out of nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world. But if the world's made out of consciousness, that's a completely different world with different rules. Is the world random? If it's random, that's one world with different rules. But if it's pattern, that's a completely different world. Is it one life? If it's one life, that's one world. But if it's multiple lives, everything changes. And it was 24 things, and it was basically saying, you think it's this, it's actually this. You've got to get the basic underlying pinning of how does reality actually work. Otherwise, we're basing all our beliefs on we're basing all our conclusions on false beliefs. Almost like the idea that we say things are reproducible. If you can measure it and if you can reproduce it, then this is science and this is actual evidence. And it's not, because you can take a level, you can put it on the ground here where I live in Canada, and it'll show the bubble in the middle. You can go to Washington, put it on the ground, and it'll show the bubbles in the middle. You can go all over the world, but that doesn't mean the world is flat. So we make a lot of assumptions about things, and what I found is the more information you get, the more you realize that what you basically believe is totally out to lunch, that we are making piles of basic mistakes on how the world actually works.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That was excellent. I really appreciate that, because I agree in a lot of ways, because there are so many different aspects, and through all the things that we've done and that we've found is that there are so many different variables to it. And one of the things that hurts me the most, and I get kind of upset when science looks at one thing and it's something you just can't put a number to. You can't put math to everything that's out there. And it's interesting, because more and more we deal with these old past lives, real lives, whatever it may be, because they all come together and it's all part of the story. And as more and more we bring it together, the better the story is revealed and opened up. When you're doing these investigations, especially in the UFO field, you've really got to think about that, especially when you're dealing with abductees too.
Yeah, because what happened to me was that I started with the nuts and bolts and the documents and all that kind of stuff, and I've actually got a theory now where I've gone to the point where I think it may all just be what I call the theory of wow, where you take a look at UFO sightings. And I always try to point out to people, because I've been in this since, they invented dirt, that people don't realize that what happens now did not happen in 1975. It's not even close. It's not even the same world. In 1975, there was basically 3 abductions. Then Travis was abducted just after my sighting, and then it sort of started to take off only when Bud Hopkins put his missing time thing out. In 1975, if you saw a UFO, that was a pretty big story, because it was a random event. It was like you were lucky, you were in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time. And now it's known that people see. You have people who are seeing them all the time because they are part of being a lifer. They have this experience. In 1975, you had ground traces. Where the thing would land, it would burn out the grass and leave tripod marks. That hasn't happened for 20 years. You see the beings are changed. The reptilians didn't come till 88. The Greys did not come till 61. Then you see the Greys, the Betty and Barney Hill Greys with the hats on. And I started looking at all this stuff, and it's like a big game. Like whatever this phenomena is, whatever the intelligence is just, to me, I've come to the conclusion they're just messaging. It's all things just to make you go wow and to look. And all UFOs are different. All aliens are different. I even did I haven't presented yet, but I've got a PowerPoint presentation where I take a look at all the Greys, and I take a look at all the major Grey cases, and I actually show the drawings. And you take a look, and there's not even a Grey that's close to anybody else's Grey. Everybody just keeps talking about Greys, but when you look at people's actual drawings of the Greys, they're completely different. They're just like different races almost.
Well,
that's true.
There's supposed to be 16 different subspecies of the Grey. So, in that regard, it would make sense. You can't just have one Grey race per se that all look like Whitley Strieber and Bud Hopkins' version of it.
Well, I would have more than 16, just myself. I've got probably, and I only I did one PowerPoint. I've got at least 20 different types of Greys, and they're all completely different. And the whole idea, so that's sort of like the rational, analytical, scientific thing is there's what's called the left brain interpreter that's in the left brain that is there to make up a bunch of garbage. So when the world becomes inconsistent, this left brain interpreter, and you can look it up, it actually does. It puts something in there, and so that's, to me, is this rational analytical thing was, there's piles of different gray races. But if you take a look at the first one, the Betty and Barney Hill,
Right.
they're wearing hats. Like, what do we got? A baseball team on Zeta Reticuli, and then, even Sherry Wild, who I just did an interview with her, extended interview, and she had a gray, and he claimed he was coming from a different place. She said, "Well, you're a gray. I mean, you're supposed to be from Zeta Reticuli," and then she said, "Are you actually an alien?" And he said, "No, not really." And that's the whole point. When you start asking, and I've got a lot of experiencers, when they ask the alien, "Are you actually an alien?" they go, "Well, no, not really." Or you wouldn't understand where we come from. You don't understand, and then it starts to fall apart. Like, maybe this isn't even alien. This is just them putting on a mask. Before 1952, before Adamski and Williamson, there were no aliens. There was nobody talking to aliens. There was nothing. It just came, and then it was like these human type beings, and then the Greys came along, and then the reptilians came along, and we had Adamski saucers, and then there was ordinary saucers with windows. There's no saucers with windows anymore. You see now we got triangles. It's like a major thing. There's no triangles. I saw my first one in 1976. I thought it was totally unique that I'd seen a triangle in 76, but it was totally unknown. So you see, it's almost like whatever the intelligence is turning the pages of a book, and all we're doing is watching them change to this. There was angel hair in the 50s, 60s. Most people don't even know what angel hair is. They were dropping angel hair. They were dropping pieces of metal in the 1950s. They're still dropping pieces of metal. And so right. I would say that people that think that there's metal, that's a piece of a flying saucer, I mean, like, give your head a shake. I mean, they come across the galaxy, and then little pieces start to fall off the flying saucer. To me, it's all like a game that they're leading us down a path to raise consciousness or whatever the heck they're doing. But it's much more complex than people think it is.
Do you think that? Oh, go ahead.
Well, it reminds me of the Maury Allen incident where they were dropping sludge.
And that was the first. That was 3 days before Kenneth Arnold. That's what people, exactly. And so people write it off as a hoax. But you start looking at the Maury Allen thing, and then you realize that it happened in Ohio. And we've got a case that we found at the University of Arizona, 1939. A spike, a spike. It was made out of nickel, 99% nickel, with a center core of copper. Came flying out of the sky in Illinois and embedded itself into the ground, and it was heated up just like in a port, which you find in UFO phenomena all the time. These are ports and manifestations. Mm-hmm. And we've got the photograph of the thing. It was brought into a NASA lab in 1967. They couldn't. The daughter had taken this thing and was trying to get it analyzed, and it was like a total unknown. Now metals are a big thing, but this is 1939, where this thing came flying out of the sky, and it was anomalous. There was no metal made on planes or anything in 1939 that was of that purity. And you see these bizarre things, and you wonder, well, where did this metal come from? And you realize there's got to be 100. I've got 3 different pieces of metal that I've been given. And so, like, why we got like 100 different pieces of metal? Like, what's wrong with the UFOs that they're dropping this stuff? And I think it's like a port material. It's stuff that they're dropping to make you go like, oh, wow, that's, what's going on here? Because it happened back in the days of the remote viewing program, in the labs at the remote viewing program. And I went to Hal Puthoff, who's the main guy who's doing the analysis, in charge of the analysis of all this metal. And I said to him, isn't this a port material? Isn't this stuff they're dropping? Because you guys had it in the lab in 1972. And he said to me, I'll tell you what, we're going to analyze the material one step at a time. But he didn't deny that this may just be material that they're dropping to make you go, like, what the heck is going on here?
Right.
Okay.
Well, we have a museum here in Lexington that has a sample of meat that fell from the sky. I mean, there was a report of this back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Was it cow?
Seriously.
Yeah.
So
the world is a lot weirder than people think it is.
It makes you wonder if that was, I don't know, if there's a correlation between the cattle mutilations and meat falling from the sky.
Yeah, I mean, this was a lot of meat that fell from the sky now, guys.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my opinion on cattle mutilations, because I did a lot of it, and I talked to Linda Howe, and I've interacted and looked at the thing where they talk about it's all downwind and downstream from nuclear accidents and nuclear testing and all this kind of stuff. And the whole thing with the cattle mutilation is, I said to Linda, so why do they take all the blood out of the cow? Like, what do they need to do that for? And she really didn't say anything. I said, they do it, Linda, because it's you wouldn't take a picture. You wouldn't think it was weird. You would just leave it. Why do they do these bizarre cuts? And why, most important, why if you mutilate a cow, if you take the cow, you've got it in the flying saucer, you go flying off, you mutilate the cow, why do you fly back to the farmer's yard and drop it from 100 feet in the air? Because they know that Linda Howe and a bunch of people are going to go take photographs, and they want you to take photographs. They want you to see this thing. It's the theory of wow. It's just they're doing these weird things, crop circles, dropping metal, cattle mutilations. They're just trying to get our attention. The more I look at it, the more I think that's what's actually going on.
Well, it's the alien version of disclosure.
Well, what I'm wondering is if it's more like the alien version of, hey, there's a bunch of animals. Let's try to feed them. Let's give them this. Let's see. Let's see how this goes. Like,
see if the humans eat it.
Jennifer wants to know what you think about them already being here, living amongst us.
Oh, they've been here for thousands of years.
Okay, but it comes down to the assumption. Again, the assumption is there time and space? And is the things is their physical world? And when you come down to ultimate reality, there is no time and there is no space, and it's not physical. It's all made out of consciousness. So yes,
you're
everything
talking pure quantum consciousness then.
Yeah, it's all here. It's all now. There is only one point. That was the download I got in 2012. So I'm in a lecture with Colin Andrews, and he's doing crop circles. This is at the UFO Congress in Laughlin. I have no interest in crop circles. I just go because he's a major researcher. I figure I'll go in the room, I'll watch this thing, and I zone out. And it's I'm doing a book called Contact Modalities. So when you do a contact modality, if you zone out or you meditate or whatever, you can pop into the field and you get this material. So what came into my head was three things. And one was a top secret Canadian government document. It's the only real UFO top secret document. And it says in the document, we were told by American officials, and you got to remember, this is 1950. This is before anybody had seen an alien. This is before almost anything had begun. And they said, we were told by American officials that other things might be associated with the flying saucers, such as mental phenomena. And the Americans aren't doing very well because they've said if we're working on it, they're willing to exchange credentials and talk to us. So in 1950, how would they know that mental phenomena was part of the UFO phenomena? And then the second thing that came into my head was Dr. Eric Walker. We chased this guy for 8 years, 14 honorary doctorate degrees, chairman of the board of the top military think tank in the United States. And he knew what was going on, but he was playing word games with us and stuff like that. And at one point, he cuts us off and he says, look, let me ask you a question. We know about ESP. And the guy didn't have an answer. He said, look, unless you understand about ESP and how it works, you will not be taken in by the control group. Very few people understand it. And then Jan Hartson asked the question. He has the experience at 9 years old in the backyard with the flying saucer and his brother and up close. And he's fascinated. He becomes an electrical engineer. He wants to build a flying saucer. He's into propulsion. So he runs up against Ben Rich at Lockheed Skunk Works. And he asked Ben Rich, how does it work? And he said, what do you know about ESP? And he said, means everything in time and space is connected. And Ben said, that's how it works. That is how it works. There is no time and space. It is here. It is now. And it's all here. And so whatever it is, so we get the idea like they're living in the world as a physical world and they come from another world. The more I look at it, the more I think, no, it's all one thing. It's all made out of consciousness, and they can play whatever game. They can appear as whatever they want, and we can do the same thing. It's just we're down in the bottom of the ocean where it's all dark, and we're totally stupid, and we think that there's a bunch of stuff going on, and if we had the knowledge that they had, we could move in and out, because that's what the CIA said. When Peniston was contacted by Kit Green a couple of years ago, Peniston said, I'm going to get out of this guy exactly what's going on. And he said, what are you guys doing? You're doing this DNA stuff and you're doing all this stuff with experiencers and MRIs. What the hell are you guys doing? And Kit Green says, we are trying to figure out how the phenomena can pop in and pop out just as quickly. And that's the whole idea. It's like pop in, they pop out. And so it comes down to this nature of reality is, what is really reality? Are they actually coming from another place, or is it all here and now? As Ben Rich, as Jan Hartson said, all things in time and space are connected. That we're making these assumptions that there's time and there's space and that there's a physical world, and that may not be true.
So I want to go back to Barry's question for a minute. As most of our listeners know, and some of you guys may know, I joined Eric's group about 2 years ago now.
Yep.
And it wasn't until about a year ago I started actually going on investigations with you. When I joined the group, when Eric asked me to join, I had no idea how I could help a paranormal group because I had no idea what I was doing.
Or what you're getting into.
Right? But I figured I could help them in bettering their name in the community. Because my dad was a Rotarian for years, and we were a Rotary family, so I know a lot about working with the community and getting your name out there as a group. When he asked me to go on my first investigation, I tried to still apply things I learned from the Rotary Club to within them, and a lot of the things that FMP and Eric did work with it. The Rotary has this thing called the 4-way test, and it's of things we think, say, or do. Number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Now, when most people within the paranormal think, is it fair to all concerned, and will it be beneficial to all concerned? A lot of them just think humans.
Right.
But when this group went in, whenever FMP went on something, Eric automatically asked, is it going to be fair to all concerned, including the spirit?
Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing thing, and I think that's something that every investigator should follow when going into something.
Well, you always want to, and that's the thing. That's the thing. Our approach has always been look at the root of the problem. Is the root of the problem needing help besides the human factor? And that's where you go into the crossing the spirits. That's where you go into, like I'm reminded of the case of the Fae realm that was stuck in our dimension, and we just opened the door, put them back in their dimension. Problem solved. You always look at the root of the problem because it's just not fair when they're in our dimension and they don't want to be here anyway, and they're the ones causing the paranormal problem. But when you're talking research on any case, that's a broad spectrum because it depends if you're talking Bigfoot, spirits, alien abduction. First, you look at the historical factors of the location you're going to. Second, you go by the description of what's going on, and it can kind of identify whether it's an alien abduction going on, whether it's something from the entity spirit realm, or whether it's a cryptid. And you approach it in that aspect. Thirdly, and I've said this on the show before, anytime you're doing research from a news source specifically, I like to get 5 different references. Mm-hmm. Because you don't just go off CNN. You don't just go off MSNBC. You try to get 5 different independent sources saying the same thing, for example. Because most of them are biased anyway. Will you guys agree?
I agree.
Well, you also have to do the background research into the person that did the original research. Okay.
Boy, that too.
Exactly. It's all about research anyway.
First-hand information.
The more research you do, I mean, that's the thing about any investigation. Fun part is being able to get out and be able to do an investigation, but that's only about maybe 10%, 15% of what you're going to do because the rest is all research.
Right.
It's like when we're talking now, Grant says where I come from, but Grant's been in it for a long time. I've been in it too a long time. My event happened in Ohio in 1964, and it continued throughout my lifetime. But when you look at the paranormal, you look at UFOs, you look at all this stuff, and the biggest problem about it is that it is all intertwined. You can go to a person who is talking about shadow figures, all this other kind of stuff, sit down with them, and it's not really, you think you're going on a paranormal ghost case, and it turns into actually an abduction case.
Oh,
all
absolutely.
is different because they are all intertwined. All these beings, all this stuff is all together in one, and it's all in the same time and space, whether it's dimensional, interdimensional, wherever. And that's where you have to look at it. And that's what, I think that's one of the biggest parts.
I think this brings up a very, very important question. How much of your perception ability is defined before you're able to really define it for yourself? And in that lies a lot, because perception ability is accountable to you and I saying this table in front of us is brown. We could both agree that it's brown, but you may be seeing purple, and another person may be seeing yellow. Perception ability is a very, very different thing. You can get 10 people to do a composite drawing on something, and it's always going to look different. One of my favorite philosophers always said, the source of all light is not the sun, it's the eye. Because without the eye, there is no light. You, by being this organism, call into being light, heaviness, hardness, love, and everything in existence. So, agreeing with Grant, consciousness plays a very, very subtle role on that level, but it actually goes a lot deeper when you're dealing with consciousness itself. Perception ability is one thing, but there is a laundering list of things to be understood when it comes to this. Now, Grant, if you don't mind, I want to ask you something, and it really intrigues me, but I know we have listeners, and I want to clarify that for them. It may not be just extraterrestrial. I'm kind of confused, but intrigued at the same time, because I really want to roll with you on this. It may not just be ET. What else could it be? If it's not here at home on Earth, it's somewhere else, but it's not ET. I mean, I want to kind of,
Okay.
I
can give
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I can give you a few examples. So my book, and connected to what you were just talking about, my publishing company is called It's All Connected. I'm writing a book on contact modalities, and this goes to the free survey. So Ray Hernandez and Edgar Mitchell start the free, and this talks to the 3,200 experiencers. And he gets this vision after he hears a consciousness lecture by me a couple days later. He gets a vision where he's pulled out of his body, and he's shown this wheel. Where it's remote viewing, remote viewing, psychic phenomena, aliens, remote viewing, and he basically, they tell him it's all the same thing. It's all the same, and the basic bottom line of it is consciousness. So I had started this company, and I did a book by Nancy Tremaine on the reptilians, because she's basically saying, this is total garbage about the reptilians are the greatest thing she ever met, and she's dealt with them since 1961. So I started looking at her story, and we published her first book. So now she's gone through somebody else to get her second book published. But when she sees the being on the ship in 1961, he's a human being sitting at a council. And then he turns into a reptilian later in the story, and then now he's like an etheric being. And so you say, well, what is he? Is he one? Is he this or whatever? And you see constantly the story. I have a guy, he's an experienced, he's coming out with a book called The One Dimension, the whole idea that it's all one thing. And he's a guy from Israel. His name is Yossi Ronan. And he encounters beings 20 years ago in Los Angeles, and these beings are green. They look like grays, but they're green. And when they leave his room, they give him this download, which still goes on today. He can still tap into this download and pick up all this material about how the world works. When they leave, they form a circle, and they hold hands, and they start going around in the circle, and it goes faster and faster and faster and faster, and they turn into light. And the light goes into a small ball which disappears. And everybody has seen these reports of it's a ball of light and it turns into an alien, and then it goes back to a ball of light and disappears. So the question is it a ball of light or is it an alien? Is that flesh and blood alien? And so I say the bottom line is that we're all spirits. We're all in this spiritual thing, and they can come in and lower their vibration. They can manifest as an owl, a deer, an alien, as whatever they want. And they will basically say, because I've got a number of cases, and I'm going to put them in a book, of people who, for example, Barbara Streisand's stepson is a big experiencer. We're not going to name his name yet, but he has this experience 3 years ago, and they come to him and they say, when we come to you, they said exactly the same as they told Ronan. Ronan said, what you see is your perception of what you want to see. So if your higher self or whatever believes in a devil, they're coming as the devil, because that's the only thing they can do. You're not going to listen to anything else. And what the guy in Hollywood said is, what they told him is, when they come to you and they look in your head, and wherever you are, that's what they're going to use to teach your lessons. So if you're into fear, you can use fear. And so the question is, what are they actually doing? I'll give you one last example. My father died about 10 years ago. My father, 2 days before he died, his father appears to him. And my father was a real skeptical guy. He was always arguing with me about UFOs and stuff. And so he didn't tell me. He told my mother. And he told my mother, he said, my dad was here today. And my mother says, really? Cool. So what did he have to say? My father said, he was just here. That's all you need to know. So if reincarnation is a fact, which does appear to be true, then my grandfather lived 100 or 1,000 lives. So why did he come as my grandfather to my father? Because if he came as any of the other lives, my father wouldn't know who he was, and it wouldn't mean anything. So he's coming in as a screen image. He's walking in, and is he a flesh and blood being, or is he just appearing as a flesh and blood being, and he's actually in the spirit world? So it may come down to that everything is in the field, and these people are able to manifest into whatever they want and appear as whatever they want. And we've seen this in screen imaging, in UFO cases on abductions, where somebody sees something, and they like these famous cases where it appears as a military guy, and he said, you got the wrong uniform on, you're not a military guy, you're screen imaging, and boom, instantly the uniform changes to the right uniform. And you start seeing that kind of stuff, and you start saying, what is really going on here? Because we get this idea that it's flesh and blood, that it's physical. Or I'll give you a last example. Sherry Wilde talks about when she's on board the ship at 15 years old, they bring on Albert Einstein, and she is introduced to Albert Einstein, she's introduced to Albert Schweitzer, and she's introduced to Nikola Tesla. And I said to her, okay, Sherry, were they physical beings? And she said, I know exactly where you're going with this. She said, I'll tell you what, it may have been a hologram, but it sure looked physical to me. So the question is, did they actually reconstruct Albert Einstein's body into a physical body and bring him back? Or are they able to do this? Because numerous people in abduction experiences will tell that their dead relatives are on board the ship, or their dead dog is on the ship, and they are able to manifest. And we can do the same thing. We can appear as whatever we want. We just don't know. We don't have the ability because we don't have the knowledge now. We still think it's a physical world and we can't change it. They know it's different. It's a different world.
So it reminds me of the movie Contact.
Absolutely.
When in the end of the movie, her dad comes through on a beach, but it's not really her dad.
Yeah, and I think that's the true thing, and that may come that you start looking at these movies. Did they actually put that into the movie? Was that something that someone stuck in there that they had picked up from people? And that's why I say it's so important to listen to experiencers who are interacting with the intelligence, because they're being told all this kind of stuff, and that's where these sort of ideas are coming from. Even I do this thing. I did another one today I did an interview with a girl from Scotland, and I've got 50 people who have flown the ship. And every time I say, okay, how do you fly a ship? Everybody says exactly the same thing. They describe how it's done, how they're trained to fly the ship, and it's all consciousness related. The craft is alive. The craft, they become one with the craft. And you start seeing these things, and you realize, like, why are they teaching you to fly the craft? What's really going on here? And you sort of lose the idea that there's some alien that just sort of got lost in space and happened to find our planet and is looking around for plants and rocks, because that's what happened in the early 60s and 70s. You don't see aliens running around outside crafts anymore with little rods picking up rocks and plants. It's a completely different world.
Grant, I've got to say, first off, I apologize. I laughed out loud, guys, because what he's saying hit home so far with me that I just had to laugh. I'm not laughing at Grant. I'm actually laughing because, I 100% agree. It takes 40, 50, 60 years to research so many different things, and still being outside of the bubble, I live it. I do these things. I have a daily life that it's very difficult. But Grant, I'm working right now. I'm working with Harvard University, consulting with them on their new study. Hopefully we can get off the ground. I've given them as much information as possible. I have got them with the free organization that's going into CCRI. And what do you think? What are your personal thoughts after studying for a long time of these non-local microtubules, or this quote-unquote antenna? that is literally possibly being manipulated by an outside source, being this problem that we're talking about?
Okay, well, that's a couple questions. The microtubulars, like, again, people are trying to put consciousness into the physical world. So we keep breaking it down into smaller and smaller parts. So then you get the University of Arizona say, oh, there's these microtubulars. Yeah, they are involved in consciousness, but consciousness is not in the brain. You're going to have structure. So the mind uses the brain to get this kind of stuff apart. It's like when you meditate. So I can say, okay, everybody meditate for 30 seconds. And the three of you are all going to do different meditations. Now, who's doing the meditation? Who's actually making the brain? So your brain will go into whatever pattern. And we've done a lot of work on different contact modalities, whether it's channeling or praying or meditation, all this kind of stuff, that the brain will go into a certain thing where the frontal lobe will shut down, the parietal lobes will light up, these kind of things. And the thing is, who's actually shutting the brain down? Who's actually making the brain do the thing? And we always want to go with the microtubulars. We want to say, well, there's this thing inside the brain that's doing it. And I say, anybody that thinks that I talk very fast. And anybody that thinks that there are little neurons that are running around putting words in sentences to try to keep up with me, and somebody's checking the grammar, and somebody's moving the hands and the mouth and the tongue and stuff like that. This is absolute insanity. There is something outside, and the brain, yes, is part of it. So that's your first question about the microtubulars. What was your second thing about?
My gosh, Grant, you want? I'm thinking about the next 10 questions.
Because the other thing you said.
What are you thinking about? And like an outside force?
The antenna. Okay.
Yes.
Let me talk to you about the antenna. I know if you read the book American Cosmic, have you read it with Diane Pasolka?
I haven't. No.
Okay. So Kit Green, who's at the CIA, who ran life sciences for the CIA, who was the control room officer for the remote viewing program in the 1970s. Who's had the longest held top secret security clearance in the United States with hell put off since the late 1960s, has been on the inside of all the UFO, all the paranormal stuff. He's the guy.
He's all over the Harvard Project right now. As a matter of fact, we have no idea how he found out about it.
Yeah, well, he's got every contact in the world. I mean, he's a very, very powerful guy.
Right.
And he said that the book American Cosmic, if you take the last couple of chapters off and the first couple of chapters off, he said that's his impression of what's actually going on in all the years that he studied UFOs and paranormal phenomena. And that's the thing. It's all connected. It's all the same thing. When you get an abductee, you're going to ask them, did you ever have anything weird happen in your life? You go, oh, yeah, I had a near-death experience. 37% of near-death experiences, they've psychic. They got, they heal people. They've been healed. You see all these crossovers. And so with the antenna thing, the guy that's in the book, his name, they call him Tyler D. That's not his name. I've actually met the guy. I actually had a meeting with the guy, and I had a phone conversation with this guy. He's from NASA, and he's an experiencer. He told me he had this invention that he sold his company for huge money. I won't say how much it was. It was huge money. And this was a download that he got. This is a noetic experience. And he said, I'll tell you what, Grant, the morning I got that idea in my head, and he had this, and talks about it in the book, that he gets this invention, and they try to put it on the space shuttle, nobody will sign off on it. He finally gets the scientists to sign off on this experiment to put it on the space shuttle, and it works. And they put it into the Pentagon, and he's called to the Pentagon. And this one-star general is screaming, he's saying, who came up with this idea? And they all point at my buddy there. And he's going like, oh, man, I thought I was going to get an award or whatever. And they were, where did you get this from? And he got this thing, and he told me, he said, Grant, I'll tell you what, the morning that I had that idea in my head, the last thing I remember the night before was a hooded figure standing at the end of the bed. And I said to him, oh, could you see its face? And he said, no, I couldn't see its face. And I said, oh, you should be regressed. Actually, you should go to Von Smith, because he's always in L.A., and you should check to see what this is all about. He says very clearly that he's in contact with the beings, and he calls them I think he calls them the intelligence of the beings. He doesn't. It's almost like To the Stars calls them the others. So they're not using the word alien. They've moved away, and they realize it's more significant than just aliens. And so he says he goes to sleep 8 hours at night. He gets up and then he goes back to bed for an hour. Then he gets up and he gets a big glass of water, and he goes and sits in the sun and he drinks this glass of water, and he starts to talk to the beings. This is this guy that's the key part to this book, American Cosmic, that Kit Green says is how this thing actually works. So you start to see this thing, and what he said was they had a piece of, he talks about the gifting field, and this is his whole idea about the metals. So he takes Gary Nolan and he takes Diane Pasulka. They are blindfolded. They're taken to New Mexico into this field where he says there's material. They got these special detectors, and they pick up this material. I've got a piece of that material because it was my friend that took Tyler D to the field and showed him where this thing was. And they call it the gifting field, that this material was given to us as a gift. And it's this metal material. And what he said to my friend, who's here in Winnipeg, he said, I'll tell you what, the key to this whole thing is that there's an antenna, that your DNA is an antenna. And that the DNA, if you look at the deep space communication antennas for NASA, they're all built like DNA molecules. And you look at it, and they do look like DNA molecules. It's the best antenna you can get. And then he says it's at 150, I'm not sure the number, 150, the frequency. And that's the communication that they're using, that the beings are contacting you through your DNA. The DNA and your hair are the two things that are in contact with what the intelligence is. And then you take a look at the material that was done on the alien implants with Roger Lear, and Roger Lear says the same thing, that these implants are giving off this frequency. It's the deep space frequency. It's the same frequency that Tyler D is talking about. So there is this frequency. That's how the contact is made, and that's why the government is watching people like Chris Bledsoe and people like that, because if you want to know what's going on, you got to talk to the people who are interacting with the phenomena, because Chris Bledsoe can tell you exactly. That's what John Alexander did, the book where John Alexander writes an entire chapter. He's with Chris Bledsoe in North Carolina, and then Chris says, they're here, and John says, how do you know they're here? I just know. I can feel it. They're here. What Chris told me was, once you interact with the craft and you put your hand on the panel in the craft, you become one with the craft, and when the craft is around, you know it's there because you feel its frequency. And John said suddenly this thing appears and goes flying through the sky. So yes, this contact is, and certain people have made contact with the craft, and they're linked up to this intelligence. They can tell you when the craft is coming. They know they have the frequency. They can pick it. So yes, there is a thing, and the DNA is critically important. And I'll give you an interesting thing, an experiment. You asked me what I'm doing now. I'm doing an experiment. This was done by Jay-Z Knight, and I'm going to try to duplicate the experiment. Jay-Z Knight does channeling. I say it's all the same thing. It's same shit, different day. It's this expression.
I don't like Jay-Z Knight. I don't like the Wampins.
Okay,
not my favorite people.
So people, she does the experiment.
So take it back further. Take it to Nikola Tesla and all of his cosmic consciousness, telling him the ideas for everything that he did.
There you go.
And what you see is Nikola Tesla is helping all sorts of people. The soul phone people claim that Nikola Tesla is helping them. We've got physical mediums that I study. That there's a woman in Brazil that's done the best EVPs in the world are done by a woman in Brazil. She says Nikola Tesla is helping her. So you have these people, the same thing as Sherry Wilde saying Albert Einstein was aboard the ship, Tesla was on board the ship, and these people are all on the other side helping us move this thing across.
But I'm talking about like the original Nikola Tesla, like him himself said that he was part of a cosmic consciousness that gave him the ideas for the inventions that he made. So even before him himself, like back in the past,
Leonardo
there's
da
all
Vinci.
of this connection. Yep.
Yeah, I'm dealing with a woman right now that's doing spirit painting with Leonardo da Vinci. I just interviewed her. I did an extensive interview with her, and Leonardo da Vinci is painting dead people through this woman, and she can paint two paintings at the same time. So you ask for a reading, and she will paint two of your dead relatives, one with one hand, one with the other hand, and she claims quite clearly that Leonardo da Vinci is the one that's doing the painting, and that he's never wrong. And people are just floored when they suddenly see one of their dead relatives being drawn, and she can't draw. But both hands are drawing, and I've seen people do this with the spirit painting. Like, that is absolutely impossible. There's nobody going to tell me that somebody can fake and try to do two paintings at the same time in the dark or in trance. It's a really incredibly complex world compared to what people are. People are trying to make it into like it's just nuts and bolts. Just drop off the flying saucer and then the technology and get lost and stuff. It's way more complex than people think it is.
Grant, the other night, what was it? About 2 nights ago, I think. Right now, I'm literally at my investigator's house. We've been looking at my case. He's been studying me for 7 years. Yeah. He knows what my emotions, are going to be 5 minutes before I do, because he has looked and looked and looked. If you want to find somebody that really, he just does what he's done. He's done it for over 40 years. Now, I had a dream where they called me. I got up, I went outside. It's not a calling, it's not something that you can hear, it's something that you can feel, and it's definitely not something that you can really describe very well. But it's an empathic, psychic connection. You get up, you go outside, and, you know, I had this dream that I went, I'm going to film this. So I went ahead and in my dream I filmed it and blah, blah, blah. The next morning, I get up. There's MUFON reports of these things. He's state director of Kentucky. You know, he's going through the MUFON reports. And I said, man, I had a dream that I went outside and filmed this thing. And he said, Eric, look at your phone. And I said, no, it was a dream. It was a dream. It wasn't a real thing. He said, Eric, look at your phone. So I pulled up my phone, and there's a 1 minute, 3 second thing there. Now, it's very interesting that this object, and I did film it. This object was, I've got to say, I've got much more impressive video, up close and personal and everything. But this object here, you could see the shimmering blue light on the ground in front of me. And I believe that's the source of this type of manipulation. Yeah. That's just a personal thing coming from me. I've studied my butt off, and I'll never stop because I've got a lot of fuel in the tank. Whereas people that might have a source of interest might take a break or two. But it's so curious to me how that manipulation happens where you believe it's a dream. You literally go outside. You literally do all these things the next day. And it makes you wonder, how often does this happen where you don't even know it happens, And then you get up and you got to go to the gas station, you get a cup of coffee, and you got to go to work and pretend to live in a society that knows nothing about this kind of thing.
No, most of them don't.
Oh, no.
No, most of them do not.
I mean,
either that or they chalk it up to some form of medical reason
or
psychiatric reason as to why.
Sleep paralysis, all that stuff. Dude,
right.
Boom. And I say dude, I don't say dude often, that's just to throw you off from my own character. But let me tell you this. I have tried for years and years and years to go back to my simple life and be me again. But that's a struggle. That's a fight. That's the real psychological, cognitive dissonance that a person goes through. I mean, if you're indoctrinated at 9 years old, it's not going to be so hard. I have children. They know about these things. They've dealt with it with me. But me being 34 years old and waking up, I went, oh, my God. I couldn't handle it. I was suicidal. Thank God. I had the investigator. Well, I don't want to give him a big head. He's here. But it's suicidal. Your entire worldview flips around, and then you're going through these cycles of empathy. You're going through these cycles of knowing things before they happen. You're going through all these things that you never thought were real. In society, it just doesn't accept that kind of thing. So it really destroys so many parts of you on the way down that if you do make it, hopefully you can do it with a sense of, some kind of psychological health, And
that's the thing. Once you've experienced it, once you've lived it, once you've been in this field for any significant amount of time, you can't stop. I shut the team down, last October, and said, I'm not going to do FMP anymore. I'm not going to. We agreed we were going to carry on S4, but no. So we started the S4 research team, which is going to. Well, we can't now because we're isolated, but we plan on going in the mountains and finding a perfect tie between UFOs and Bigfoot, and we're still going to do that. Just this summer. But no, once you've been in this field, I've been doing this for 30 years. Once you've been enthralled in this field, you can't just walk away from it, ever.
Yeah, goes to the theory of wow, is why did they do these really bizarre, strange things where they do this, because once you do it, it's rather than coming to you and say, okay, I'm here to bring you freedom and democracy, Jesus and McDonald's, and you go like, get the heck out of here. They do this weird thing where you just can't let it go. I'll give you an example. You're talking about the dream, and this is one of the contact modalities. It's like Bashar says, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world. I had a woman, I have a rabbit hole thing. I have experiencers appear every second weekend on the internet, and one of them was from Edmonton, and she tells, I have the photographs that she did. She comes on the Zoom thing, and she's describing as I'm going through the photographs. She's on a flight from Edmonton, Alberta to Ottawa, the Canadian capital. She's up at 37,000 feet, and just before the flight, she gets this thing in her head, says, upgrade. She says, I never upgrade. And that thing said, upgrade your seat. So she goes from the back right side of the plane up to the first row, window 1. She takes off there at 37,000 feet, and she says, there it is, in the clouds. And it looks like a building with a giant antenna on it. And and this is over Saskatchewan, which is like Montana, like North Dakota or South Dakota, flat as can be, flat as a billiard table. There's no 37,000 foot buildings. And this thing is there, and it doesn't look like a UFO. It's just this really weird thing. Clear photographs, daylight photographs, and again, they put her in this thing, and they just said, watch this. Isn't this weird? And when something like that happens to you, there's no way you're ever going to get it out of your head.
Maybe it was Atlantis.
No,
Exactly.
no,
You
never,
don't get
never.
rid of
Grant,
it.
there's something that...
Hold on one second, sorry.
Sure,
We're going to have
sure.
to cut you off there. We are going at the top of the hour for an excellent first hour, guys. Thank you very much, and we will be back in about 5 minutes for our second hour and hopefully our second question.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so here is
job,
Crypt
Eric.
Amnesia with Poltergeist.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, cause I'm rotted here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire. But I cannot die, I am your poltergeist. I must have 1,000 souls trapped inside. I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, cause I'm rotted here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire. But I cannot die, I am your motherfucker. They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, cause I brought it here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire. But I cannot die, I am your poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Oh, poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist.
Welcome back to S4 with your host, Eric Cooper.
All right, welcome back to S4 as we do our March Roundtable. Tonight with us we have Mike Crow, Barrie Gaunt, Eric Mitchell, and Grant Cameron. Welcome back, guys.
Welcome, thank you.
Good to be back.
Thanks a lot.
I really had this, strong notion. God, I'd really have to say that I've looked at ufology, and I've met a lot of people. I moved around. I roommated with Travis Walton, the Allagash twins. I spent a lot of time with them. I've been really busy in my short period of time dealing with this. But number one, I was one of those guys that never believed in the paranormal. I thought people that talk like this were absolutely nuts. Right. My indoctrination was not fun. But the number one thing, and I don't want to give Grant a big head here because he's here, but I do want to say that he's ahead of the curve when it comes to ufology. He always has been, and sometimes we can get lost on different subjects that may not be 100% accurate. These things happen. Blah, blah, blah happens. You can get judged and all that stuff. But, Grant's perspective has really, lit me up throughout the whole deal. One thing I want to say to you, Grant, personally, is that this thing was coming down into my yard. It was a short, dead-end street. 20 apartments on one side of the street, 3 trailers on the other side of the street. This thing was not a light in the sky. It was in the yard. I can take off my shoe and throw and hit it. With my shoe, and everybody on the street, my investigators on the line right now, everybody on that street moved away. There were Black Hawk helicopters, there were people from the Pentagon involved, there was all kinds of things going on, and about 5, 6, 7 instances, just into this whole thing. I'm leaning up against my apartment, and I'm looking at this thing, and it's the feeling of maybe having, walking through the woods and you realize a bear is about 10 feet away. You freeze up and you go, oh shit, how do I deal with this situation? I apologize about the foul language, but I would emphasize it if it's encouraged. But you just kind of freeze up and you look because, this isn't supposed to be here. You feel it in your nature. There's parts of your mind. But long story short, I actually voiced it. And I said, what are you? And why are you here? Because I did not want to believe in aliens. I mean, little green men. To postulate this foolishness to actually exist, that little green men or, flying saucers coming down here and doing this and that. I was always taught that, it's a mental illness to talk about this. But the only thing, and there has been communication. I do have to kind of slide that one under the rug, but there has been communication. The only communication that was absolutely perfect, absolutely English, absolutely right there and very, very clear to me was a simple phrase that became very complicated to me over time. When I asked this thing, what are you? I clearly heard out loud as if somebody was like right in my ear or inside my head, which, geez, sounds like schizophrenia. I hate to see, but I've been checked, I've been under investigation for a long time. They said to look is not to see. It is merely to observe with what little we have to offer. And Grant, you've done so much work that I literally want you to take that phrase and kind of carry it around a little bit with you, because it will never leave me.
Okay, give it to me again, because that's pretty profound stuff.
To look is not to see.
Yeah.
It is merely to observe with what little we have to offer. And a lot about what you're talking about tonight really, really reflects not only the profound statement, but the profound feeling itself. Because, you know, when you look, when you use yourself to observe the world, the universe, and everything else around you, it kind of states a personability of social conditioning and engineering that you believe that you have become. And then when you look at other things, you know, like Zicheng and China, which means that which is of itself, you start to realize that everything that we are is not who we are. It's our conditioning and not what we are. You can't scream at a flower and say, you're supposed to be a rose. You know, they don't listen to you. Human beings are the only species on this planet that cohere to that type of, conditioning.
Yeah, we're
you know,
conditioned.
an oak tree is not going to be something else. We change and we self-police. We call ourselves crazy. You know, hey, you're a crazy person. Well, that's not a diagnosis. That's a self-policing word to use to, do what it does. You know, its own power. But to look is actually not the ability to see. So first and foremost, we've got to alleviate the ego saying my opinion is important and yours is not.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've gotten from that. There's a million things I've gotten from that. Yeah, and the more you look at it, the more you go, oh my God. But to observe with what little we have to offer is a very humbling experience. And to want to have more or to want to have less is a decision that's very, it's a personal thing. But I just, God, Grant and Bear, how smart was I when this was going on with me? I had a deep Southern accent. How y'all doing? What y'all up to? And one day, Bear calls me on the phone one day, and I'm like, intellectually, I would like to tell you, blah, 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 blah. And he said, whoa, who are you? I'm trying to call Eric Mitchell. And I was like, no, it's me. My brain's going too fast. And that's, when he realized that I had been I can't even say it. Yeah, I changed it all changed. It all changed.
And every abductee has that thing happen to him,
Oh, yeah.
Grant knows that also. And it's really bizarre. When I was a kid and I was young and I was left with the stuff in it. I mean, the people I'd get up in front of people and tell them, oh, that wall's not real. This is what you just believe that it's supposed to be here. And this is this. And you're conscious. And when you die, you die. Everything dies. It's not in your brain. It's in your soul. It's in your conditioning. We've lived thousands of lives. We have energy and everything else. We're all here. And then I went on a different path. And then when I was 18, I had another visit, and they were saying, you're doing it all wrong. You've got to be who you are, and you have to study your ancient history and beyond, and look at the gods and look at all this other stuff, and all these things that are ancient. And now you have where we're coming from, where we're going. But believe me, when no matter what, it's not in your mind, it's not in your brain, it is within your being or essence.
Yeah,
and
can
it's
you
all
imagine?
Conscious. It's everything is all nothing but consciousness.
Can you imagine having 1,000 IQ and talking to Joe Blow on the street?
No, not even.
Really
no comprehension.
I can't even do that with my IQ now.
Yeah, I can't do that now.
So on their end, it would be the most complicated thing in the world to, just say anything. You know, it's the most complicated thing in the world. You know, if we're talking about infusing an understanding, just ring a bell in the background when it comes to understanding. We are literally talking about something alien. We're not talking about something on Broadway. So the understanding is so different. Man, fly to Zimbabwe and just speak English and try to order food or go to the bathroom or find your way around.
I've tried to do that in France. That was bad
enough. No. But you took the wrong off ramp right there. No, don't do that. But what I'm saying is, even on this planet that we live on, it is so alien to go a state away, a country away. Yeah. The language changes, everything changes, and when you're dealing with something that is so intelligent in a different language, and you know, sometimes being smart doesn't make you understand stupid people.
No, you know, and I look at it differently, Eric, and I look at it more in a vastness. I don't look at an IQ. An IQ is something that's given. Everything else, consciousness is consciousness.
Yeah,
right.
And it is it's timeless, it's endless, it's always here. You've experiencing 1,000 things all one time in this life. If you are that way, you experience all your lives at one time.
How do you interconnect with something that is disconnected from its own reality? We built a society that is completely against our own existence.
Right, but what it is the true existence is always here. There is nothing other than us, this consciousness of us. You know, it goes back to the old thing. I mean, a long time ago, they used to have this UFO they called Gus, and it basically talked itself. It was a being. You know, it was a live, real being. Then you have the other type of stuff where you're looking at the orbs and everything else, and orange orbs or whatever. When you take photos of them, however they appear, you can look at them for craft, you can look at them anyway. But what happens is it is just nothing but an existence and is put into there. They're communicating you via every vastness. It becomes a thing where you are not physically, but it's in your mind. It's all, everything. I don't even want to say it's in your mind. It's in your consciousness. It's in your subconscious mind, where all of it comes from and all of it goes.
Your very being, yes.
Yes, it's your very essence, you know, and that essence is always with you forever. And whatever you want to appear to be or whatever you want to be, that's the thing about, you hear people talk about manifestation, you hear all this other stuff. Guess what? Anything is capable as long as you are the one that wants it to be. You know, you make what you are. And I mean, when it happened to me, and I just talked about all this stuff, and it was like going, people would look at me so strange, like going, "Oh, get the guys out in the white jacket." But that's my whole life. It was all because of having this experience.
But
1964.
Growing up, so growing up in the 70s in a very highly religious home, I was always told if it's not of God, it's a demon. So but I didn't believe
of course.
it. I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
I have my own mind. But moving on, Mike, what's your first question tonight?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. What's your first question?
Oh,
we're still on question one.
I was sitting here listening. Man, I'll tell you what, Grant is fascinating. I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking about asking something about Trump and his unrealistic prospect of recovery. But I really want to get away from that, because all this right now is just really surreal to me.
Right.
Let's get into a subject I can relate to.
Okay.
Connie had a show for the last 3 days with my buddy Squatchman of Squatchman TV at his hotspots up in Indiana.
Okay.
Now, they got a lot of eye shine up there. I mean, they really did.
That's what she was saying.
And,
I was talking to her last night, and yeah, she said they've never seen that before. But yeah, the eyes on Bigfoot are I won't say glowing, but coming out shining in pictures, correct?
Correct. It's like LEDs. And it's amazing. But do you think that Squatches can become invisible? Because
oh,
seriously,
absolutely.
Oh,
I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Now,
so
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing. I'm just saying.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But
I know.
The thing is, if you look at Sasquatch, Bigfoot as an interdimensional creature, which I firmly believe he is,
right?
My opinion. But if he's interdimensional, he can.
That's not becoming invisible. That is a totally
I wouldn't
different
say
thing.
that that's invisibility. I would say that's an interdimensional
You're entering
travel.
a different dimension. You are not becoming invisible
But
to
that's true. But I have heard cases where he appears almost like a heat wave, and you can still hear him, but you just see like a heat wave moving. I've heard cases of that as well, which would.
That was Predator, not Bigfoot.
No, that was Bigfoot.
Well, you know, it's the same. It's the same concept. You know, when I
look
at, we're all talking about the same concept because of the thing is yes, he is a conscious being, and he can bring himself as the hairy man. He could be standing right next to you. You won't know it.
Right.
They can communicate to you via telepathic. Yes, there is eye shine. There is. It kind of goes back to the old thing of look at when you look at the past, look at some of the old shamans, and look at some of the areas that are going. You go back into, and you go back into shapeshifters, and they had some kind of ability to be able to transport or change their shapes. Same things with the Manitou. All this stuff going way back into throughout history, all these things had this ability. How they have that ability, it's all comes through your consciousness.
If you want to look at a real-time animal, look at the way the octopus blends in.
Of course, probably one of the strangest thing, and that's one of the things that what was it? I think
my daughter's a microbiologist.
Yeah, talking about the true alien is a octopus because it has the ability to change and to be able to do so many different things and to match.
Yeah, my daughter's a microbiologist, and when you look at biology and you look at the actual diversity of life. And then you discover this thing called the electron microscope, and you look at these cells. Guys, Jesus. Yeah, I know we're watching football. I know we're watching Honey Boo Boo. I know we're distracted by so many things. Because that's what we're doing.
Ain't nobody watching Honey Boo Boo.
Well, I don't know.
It's Tiger King now.
Okay. All right. Whatever the hell takes up your time, societal... things, they come up. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to watch. We're supposed to spend our time on that. Okay, go ahead. But, responsibly, why can't we just kind of step outside of that box and look at so many different things? A lot of people look at me and they go, well, Eric, he probably studies a lot of UFO stuff. No, I study the hell out of botany. I study the hell out of the basic understandings of nature, philosophy, so many different things. What do I need to know about a UFO? I need to understand about myself. I need to understand about nature. I need to understand about, the physics of things. So many people are fascinated by the UFO conundrum, but when you wake up one morning and your life has changed, how is it really going to happen? You woke up one morning and the coronavirus is here, and now, it's slowly seeping in that, this everyday life stuff that we do isn't secure. It isn't right. It isn't fastened in a safe place. So who's going to help you? now reality's soaking in like that for a lot of people. But when it comes to the UFO enigma, phenomena, blah, 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 whatever you want to call it, look, it is how you perceive. It's how you react. It is quote unquote character. Because if I had my leg cut off because of diabetes tomorrow, I can be depressed alcoholic, depending on everybody around me, or I could be someone that can run a marathon in 2 years. It depends on character. It doesn't mean, that I know what it is. It doesn't mean that I can express, what they are, who they are, where they come from. It doesn't mean anything. People come to me and I say, look, I absolutely know nothing, but I know compassion. I know how to work with you. I know how to help you. I know how this system works. And it's embellished in such a way that we lose ourselves while trying to find ourselves. And it's really important to look in the right direction. But we're not. We're just not. Ufology has done it for 70 years. And Grant's actually talking about where we should go, and I think he's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly right, because basically all we are is a consciousness walking around in a meat suit. That meat suit is biology. That all that stuff is, and by the way, guess what? None of it's
like everything else is.
But it's been proven that there is something that does survive. At death by weighing a body and everything else, a certain amount of ounces seems to leave and continues on. And in our line of work into the paranormal and all fields of paranormal, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a consciousness that's out there that is endless and can appear and do anything that it wants to do. And we are no different than that.
Here's another part of that question. Now, the first sighting I ever had, I was driving down a little gravel road out in the middle of nowhere in southeastern Kentucky, and I saw Bigfoot going up into a bunch of underbrush on the side of the road. And it instantly in my mind, I thought red cow, and then I analyzed it instantly, and no, that was not a red cow. I slammed on the brakes, I got out, and I run to that clump of trees and underbrush. Open field around it now. There's nothing in there. And there's not a sign of anything. And I mean, it's going in my mind, this thing's disappeared.
Right.
And, you get to thinking about it and you wonder if it has the capability of being invisible. But then you go on and, well, if it has that ability to be invisible, why did it let me see it to begin with?
That's the key point. Let me make a point about that. I'll tell you my one Sasquatch sighting. It happened in 1976. If you know where I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which is the flattest area in the world. There is one tree per mile. And
all right.
1976, there was a Sasquatch sighted outside a house looking in a window. A woman had a kid in the middle of the night. Kid had colic. This being's looking in the window. And there was an Aboriginal tracker who actually took me to where this thing was. There was just a little tiny bunch of trees. Otherwise, it's just like flat as could be. We have this joke. You can let your dog go and watch him run away for days. And it's completely flat. And there are no trees. And this thing was 9 feet tall. And this tracker showed me it went along this creek. There was a couple of trees there. It went into the trees, into this clearing, and it was snow. The snow had melted, and then it had frozen again. It was very hard. This guy was 250 pounds. He said he didn't break through the snow. This thing was breaking through the snow. And when it got to the middle of the clearing, the footprints disappeared. So I always thought it was, the UFOs had dropped it off, because we had a lot of UFO sightings in the area at the time. And I thought it was like letting your dog out to go to the bathroom and then putting it back on the flying saucer and take off.
Yeah.
But the question you brought up, like, why me? And that's the important thing I always point out to people is you think that's the noetic thing I said. It says, is this a random world or is it pattern? And we seem to think it's random. Well, I just happened to be there when this thing went running across the road. And when you start looking at it, you start realizing the fact that if it's multiple lives, you may have chosen to have that experience. Why are we in the field? Why do we have this? It may be that we chose to have this phenomenon. I'll give you an example. The guy who took Tyler D to this site in Mexico, or in New Mexico, is a very wealthy guy here, a real estate guy here, and he had 2 sightings. He has the one sighting, almost like we were talking about before, where you sort of get a notion. So he's never had a UFO sighting in his life. He had a cabin on the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border, and he's sitting there, and he's 10 minutes at the end of a movie. He's watching an outer space movie, and at 10 minutes, he gets this thought in his head. It says, you should go outside and skywatch, and you should take your laser. So he takes his laser, he goes wide onto the deck, and his flying saucer, his UFO goes flying by, and it's close enough, and he hits it with the laser, and then he goes, why'd he hit it with the laser? That's weird. And then he has a second sighting a couple of years later where his wife sees a metal object coming down the river. He lives right on the river, and he sees an orange ball of light. So they see 2 entirely different things. So he gets a high-level psychic, and I never thought of this until this came. She's a woman that was working with a guy by the name of, who's a Raven in the Avery. He was the guy that ran the remote viewing program for the U.S. Air Force. This girl works for him, and she does remote viewing where she tries to figure out what's the photograph in the Associated Press on Tuesday morning. They do the target on Sunday, and she's 75% accurate as to what the photograph in the Associated Press on Tuesday will be. So he asks her, he says, okay, so I had this UFO thing. I went out and I hit it with the laser. He said, well, where are they from? And she goes, what do you mean, where are they from? They weren't from anywhere. She says, what do you mean? She says, you sent them. You sent them to yourself to wake yourself up. And that's this whole thing about, is it a random world? Is it one life world? If it's not random and if it's multiple lives, then maybe you chose to come in and you chose to be in this field for whatever reason to raise consciousness or whatever it is, and that's not a random event. I remember the Free Foundation, they had the thing where 37% of all experiencers have near-death experiences. In fact, the woman I interviewed today from Scotland had a near-death experience, and she's a major, been on the ship piles of times, speaks light language, got the symbols, flown the ship, all this kind of stuff, and yes, she's had the near-death experience. 37%, that's 8 times the national average. So the question is, and the Free wanted to do this survey. They said, we need to do a committee. Like, we got to figure out, why do so many UFO experiencers have near-death experiences? And I said, you're asking the wrong question. You have to make the right assumption. Is it a random event? Is being an experiencer a random event, or did you choose to do it? And is near-death experience a random event, or did you choose to have a near-death experience to learn something? They're not random events.
I would agree with that. Real quick though, we have so this question's more for Barrie and Mike, but Tim in the chat room wants to know, and this is way off topic, but was the young boy that was attacked and killed in Knott County, Kentucky? Is there anything new on him?
No, not that I've heard.
No.
Okay.
There has been nothing new on that. Again, excuse me. There has been so much. I've been actually out there trying to beat the bushes and do some stuff on it. The weird thing about it is again, there are certain beings that I believe, and I personally know others who are aware of them, that are on this planet in, you've got to remember something. The cave areas and everything else around Kentucky are
right.
Massive. And every once in a while, you get in an area and something comes out and grabs you. You look at David Blade's
missing
411.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And now it's a terrible case. And yes, mutilated, they can't find out what it is.
Can you go into that case a little bit? Because I'm not even familiar with that one.
There's been so many different cases.
This one was. Let me step in for a minute. It was a 13-year-old boy that went out behind his house into the woods, and I mean, apparently it's something that he did quite often, but and it wasn't unusual for him to do that. But they found his body a few days later and it was reported that he was attacked by an animal. And that's really all that has been said about it. Except for forest rangers with the Daniel Boone National Forest saying that's highly unusual and it is safe to go into the forest. Well, let's say they think that it could have been a bear. That's what they're promoting. Of course, there have been sightings of cougars and panthers here, and they're poo-pooing those as probably something else, like a bobcat or something. But I saw a panther in Lexington, in the city limits of Lexington in 2008, 4 years before I saw the Bigfoot, which is odd to me. And, a few years later, a year and a half later, there were several witnesses that saw the Black Panther. So this is becoming more and more common in the area. And south of Knott County, in Bell County, Leslie County, that area, there is a huge amount of Bigfoot activity. Now, I think that, number one, panthers come to an area when coyotes and deer become more populated in that area. That has happened in Lexington quite a bit. We're quite a ways from Knott County, Kentucky, probably 120 miles. But we've had at least two sightings or two incidences involving one a black panther and one a mountain lion, one in Fayette County, one in Bourbon next door. Now they actually they killed Fish and Wildlife went out and killed the mountain lion in Bourbon County. But
there's been so many reports of unusual things. Cougars have a running area of 120 miles. They will move 120 miles. That's their area. They run that way. Bears are in Kentucky. Wolves are in Kentucky, even though they will tell you that they're not.
Right.
They actually stocked red wolves a long time ago, but DNR will not tell you that.
We've seen bears.
The test that they did on that kid, though, and what they came out was, it was a non-canine, not of this known species in this area or any area. The problem about it is before that you had other counties around here in Kentucky that had stuff where horses were picked up and thrown into a lake and killed. Dogs were killed. They were warning about people doing it in Monroe County. You had all these different kinds of different things that were out there doing
just last year, south in Jefferson County and south, the llamas were attacked.
Yes, exactly.
Remember that?
Yeah, and what happens? Nothing that it is not of a familiar breed or anything that we know of that has taken it, and it just disappears and it leaves. But in all these areas, even with a 13-year-old kid, he was found way up a steep hillside, laying against a tree.
Yeah, that's what Tim said.
It was like he was almost drug.
Yeah, I was going to say that he was drug away.
Drug up a steep hillside, several hundred feet.
Right, several hundred feet up. I mean, we're talking a steep hillside.
Right.
So, these kind of things when you're dealing with it and knowing some of just going back into what we really don't know that is here and what is not here. I mean,
because that doesn't sound like a bear.
People can look at me and go, man, he is so far out of whack, but I've dropped it, and I've stopped all over this place.
Chupacabra.
And I've seen tracks of stuff that is not natural. Is nothing that I've ever seen in tracks of. Even around the Hilliard area, everything else, and I just look at it and go, wow. And if you follow it, they disappear. I'm sorry.
Not just in
it's
Kentucky,
just
but all over
it's
the
just
world.
like anything. It's everywhere.
Everywhere has these weird sightings or these weird incidences of something happening that just should not have happened. I mean, look at Diablo Pass. Look at all of these different times when something happened or there was mutilations of some kind that just weren't explainable.
I think what concerns me is the human mutilation factor, which I don't know, is this one of those cases? But there are a whole ton of human mutilation cases in the Netherlands here,
right? And even a few years ago. I mean, look back a few years ago in Brazil, when you were having the cattle mutilations, and what did they find? They found a body down there. Am I not correct, Grant, about this body in Brazil that was mutilated just like cattle mutilation?
Yeah, look, guys. I'm going to go ahead and jump off here after I say this. I've got some other things to do, people to work with. I know radio and television, it has entertainment value and all that stuff, but my life, and I want to assert that in a way that maybe that most people can understand, that I have scars on my body. I have things that have happened to me. And, the sun's coming out. And when the sun comes out, you get, your tan on a little bit and your scars. The winter's fine and blah, 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 blah. It goes on. I have scars on my body. Mm-hmm. And nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a damn. The horrificness of, what goes on is intolerable to any thought process. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm trying to say that yes, it is entertaining. Yes, it is something that is very interesting. But to those of us that live it, my God, man. I've got a laser incision all the way across my chest. I have no idea where I got it. Every doctor I've talked to said that's a laser incision. I've been mutilated in ways that, well, Barrie can tell you. He's seen the pictures. My body has been messed with. And I don't like that. I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how to formulate that into everyday life where people are go, well, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Well, okay, I accept that, but I sometimes can't accept me. I can't accept the fact that these things are going on. I try to explain them away, but every single day becomes a new day. It becomes a new situation, and you try to find a duality in life to where you fit in somewhere, but you can't, and you don't, and you hurt. So when it comes to mutilations, I got to tell you, man, I'd rather have been mutilated to death than to survive what I have survived. But I can say the learning process has become something that I come to understand to be extremely important. To think, to feel, to reevaluate things and learn more. It is terrible. It will test you in every single way. But the understanding itself, the journey. I'm sorry to bore you guys, but it is very testing, very teaching, and very isolating. And we're talking about people all over the world that suffer in a place that you probably know them and you wouldn't know that they deal with these kinds of things. So yeah, mutilation, it sucks. Why do they need that tissue from your body? Why do they need to cut you open? Why do they need to do this and that? Yeah, it's one thing to say, okay, I have a perception and it's gray. It's another thing to say, I woke up with a perception this morning that I'm bleeding all over the place, and there's no way a doctor can explain that. Ufology, they try. They really try. But guess what? Who tries harder? That person that wakes up every morning going and knowing I'm completely sane, but something's going on, and I can't even protect my own damn children from it.
Right.
So it gets a little bit deeper than entertainment. It gets a little bit deeper than a discussion. It gets a little bit deeper than a debate or belief system. When you bleed, when your child bleeds in front of you, all those little tendencies tend to walk away. And I think people need to understand that even though it's an interesting subject, that it actually is a subject, and it actually is real. And, it destroys families, it destroys hearts, it destroys so many things. But in destruction, we tend as a species to find hope and try to build. And that's all you can do with that. And I spend every waking hour of my life trying to do that for other people. But it's not always easy. And, I haven't worked with 4 people. I haven't worked with 6 people. I've worked with thousands of people. I do this with my life. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're accountants, they're all kinds of people that live seemingly a normal life. But when no one's watching, they call me, and that's when we have these discussions about their life and how they really feel about what happened to them. And so, yeah, in retrospect, in every way thought and possible, people get mutilated. I'd rather be physically than emotionally and mentally. Confused, not knowing what's going on, possibly going further into inventing what's going on with me so I can have a good time, and researchers picking up that idea and believing it's 100% the truth. I don't know. I believe that discernment is key, and it's a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility to have incredible, masterful discernment. And in order to do that, I think you have to be emotionally connected to that whole thing, to be able to live it instead of research it. But you guys have a good night. I've got to run off, and I look forward to more shows.
Absolutely. And nobody can understand what you go through, and that's why we do. That's why we do what we do. When we ran a team, we actually were able to stop abductions through the astral. But as Barrie can tell you, we did have the one case that we had to pull out. We had to pull back. We had to stop. And that's when it came to the MyLab. And that comes for the safety of, the team. When you have the human element along with the alien element, it becomes a hazard to the ones trying to stop it.
Well, you can eat a hot dog right now staring at a steak, and
Right.
your mouth is going to taste like a hot dog, my friend. And you have to be there. You have to live it. You have no idea how much I've lost. You have no idea how much I've bled. You have no idea how much I've cried. And you have no idea how much I've had to practice to pretend that it's okay. And, I have no idea what it's like not to do this anymore.
Right.
And, it's, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about so many people that I've worked with over the years. And, yeah, me too. But we're a long way from understanding how incredibly dumb we are and incompassionate we are when it comes to this whole thing, because There are soldiers that can go overseas and come back. They have PTSD. They can get treatment. They're going to be okay someday. I cannot. My clients cannot go to a psychologist and go, I have PTSD because of this. They can't do it. They can't do anything out in the open. Nothing out in the open. And it squanders them into a place, and they have wives, they have husbands, they have children, they have jobs, they have all these things weighing on their shoulders, but they also have this. And there's no way in the world that I can take 26 letters to express 1 billion neurons in my brain on how that affects a human being. But I can say this. There is still possibly hope on doing the right thing with this subject. Instead of studying it, instead of being entertained, instead of doing all these things, I think it's very important to recognize it and actually doing something to help the people that are affected on the ground. It doesn't matter if it's a good contact experience or a great abduction experience. It does not matter. It matters that what happens to you is embellished in a way that is going to make it okay. Optimism. Something that I suffer from often. It depends on your character. Mm-hmm. And every one of us suffers. I mean, every single one of us suffers. It does not matter who you talk to. If it really happened to you, you suffer. If you don't do it in front of somebody, you do it in silence. And that's what most of us do. Reality, in a way, destructed or obstructed, is always going to cause post-traumatic stress. And, geez, guys, you don't want to live that life. I've met soldiers that can heal faster than me. I've met people that have been through hell that can heal faster than me. So many people I know, somebody I'm sitting next to right now suffers from it. You're not going to see it when you meet them. You won't see it. You won't see it when you meet me. But let me tell you, when we all get together, we suffer together, and it becomes something more recognizable. But you guys have a great night, and Grant, keep kicking butt, man. You're doing a great job, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks. All right, you have a good night, Eric. All right, Grant, what's your first question tonight?
Okay, let's go, because we're talking paranormal and UFOs. What's the connections between UFOs and in the spirit world?
I think you have it handled with the consciousness aspect, for one. Two,
can I give you an example? I'll give you an example of stuff that I've run up against just recently.
Okay.
I've got a guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got a guy out of Utah, and he may actually have the virus. He's got 4th stage heart disease, and he may have the virus. But we're trying to get him in this book. He's documented his experiences. He has 3 dozen out-of-body experiences that he believes the beings enabled him to have. They take him into the spirit world. And in the spirit world, he's with his mother 3 times. One time she's physical. The other time she's in sort of an etheric body type thing. And she takes him to a building in the spirit world. And he says, she shows me the building. She says, when you come here, you'll get a room in this building. And it's a real small building. And he walks into the building, and he said the weirdest thing was it was way bigger on the inside of the building than it was on the outside of the building. And then I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's the same story Chris Bledsoe told me about the flying saucer. And this is the guy that everybody in the government is looking for at this guy. And he says, I go to the flying saucer. He's telling me how he flies the flying saucer. He goes in, and it's like really huge inside. And he looks outside, and it's a little tiny egg type thing. He looks inside, and it's huge. It's exactly the same story told from 2 different perspectives. Or if you take a look at, I don't know if you follow the documentary, the UFO Cover-Up Live, 1988. Richard Doty, who was playing the Falcon in the documentary, says the most dramatic thing he ever saw was the aliens had a crystal, and this crystal, octagon crystal, that you could turn it, and the light, you could see all the history of the world in this crystal. And that the rumor was, Linda Howe and I were chasing this in the 1980s, is that they'd showed the crucifixion of Jesus Christ on this crystal to the American government. So Ron Johnson, the guy from Utah, tells the same story. He says, I'm in the room, and he doesn't know this other story about the alien story in 1988. He says, my mother takes me to the end of this building, and there's these crystals coming out of a table, and everybody's got their own crystal, and you turn the thing at a certain angle, and you can see your entire life. And he takes this dog's crystal, and he sees how his dog died, that the neighbor had shot the dog. He never knew how his dog died, but he watched his dog's life in this crystal. So you have these two things. One's a UFO story, one's a story from the spirit world, and they're identical, and they're not something you're going to make up. Like, nobody's going to make up a story about a crystal where you can see your past lives and stuff in this crystal based upon how you let the light reflect off the crystal. And I found that very, very interesting, that it's all connected. And so I wanted to see your reaction to stuff that you may have seen where you get these crossover stories that seem to indicate we may be looking at the same thing, just with a different mask.
So we've handled cases where there was abduction, there were spirits, all in one case. That's about as far as the crossover goes. My curiosity, so with the Bigfoot sightings you see, you've got some people that have seen Bigfoot come out of a UFO. They've seen Bigfoot running away from UFOs. So you see two sides of the coin with the Bigfoot side and UFOs. But I do believe they're all connected by energy.
What I wonder is, we have certain psychics and mediums that believe they are only talking to spirits.
Right.
Well,
not anymore.
Well, no, but
I don't agree with that either.
Yeah. When no, but like some of them believe that that's all they're talking to.
Oh yeah, some of them believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
okay,
if you look at
so
the skull
we
experiment,
agree on that part. Some of them do believe that that's all they're talking to. If you have that thought in your head, sometimes that thought is hard to get out.
Yeah.
Now, an alien who is trying to contact one of these people, could it be possible that they are using that thought process to introduce themselves as a spirit or through a spirit? Are they using spirits to talk to certain people?
Yeah.
If they have, like, I'm wondering if they might have an easier way to talk to spirits than directly to humans without freaking us the hell out.
Well, just like using owls.
That's what I was going to say.
You know,
that's probably
just like using owls and deer when they're doing an abduction. Yeah. They use what's most comfortable with the human, so they don't freak them out.
Yeah, you know, in every
think
case,
that would also depend on the race and what they're trying to get across.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you and I've investigated several abduction cases and paranormal cases, Gaunt paranormal cases. I mentioned it earlier. That turned out to be abduction cases in a way, and you do see an abductee will have incredible paranormal events of shadow figures, orbs, light orbs. They can even become telepathic, move things. They can do all kinds of different stuff like that, and it comes up all the time. And you know, it's kind of, I look at it and I go, because it is all interrelated, you know, and my experiences on crafts and everything else is exactly what Grant's talking about. Every abductee will tell you, you're looking, when you see this thing, maybe some people do get to see a 500-yard black triangle. Other people see a city. But if you're normal, you're going to see like a 30-foot or 40-foot craft. You get in the craft, and it's like it is a 100 million square foot building.
Yeah.
You know, it's just endless. You know, so there is a lot to deal with it. You know, and when you talk about psychics and everything else, one of the problems that I have is so many of them say, "Oh, I only want the fluffy stuff." You know, let me pet things. You know,
Like
and they go,
numbers.
a dark. I don't want anything dark. I don't want anything dark. Where you're missing the whole picture. You know, because just because it's in your mind that you've determined that black is bad. I mean, we all know the Cowboys wore white and black hats. We all knew that those were, the good guys wore the white hats. The guys in the black, they're bad. You know, you see a dark shadow person, and it's black. What are you going to go? Oh my God, it's bad. It's got to be a demon. No, it's not. I mean, it's all the stuff that people are projecting into their own, their own things. But what we're talking about is opening it up beyond that, and getting down to the real nuts and bolts. It's just like when we, a lot of abductees also astral travel extremely a lot, and what happens in astral? If something happens to your body in astral, do you not get bruised, or do you not come back the same way in your personal body when you return to your body? Doesn't that happen? Why is that?
You can get hurt. So your body can weaken if you're having too long.
Right. So it's all, when you take this look at this whole thing, you can see how it is all connected. And I'm sorry if you're not looking at all the pieces. If you don't investigate, if you want to be a ghost hunter, great, go hunt ghosts. But you're missing a large piece of the pep. I don't know if you want to be a UFO hunter.
And you know what? We're
want to do UFOs.
We're going to key on that the last hour for sure. So we have to go to break now, and we'll come back. I want to discuss that a little bit more.
All right. Well, here is Crypt Amnesia with Hell Within.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
Welcome back to S4 with your host, Eric Cooper.
Welcome back to S4. Tonight we still have Barrie, Gaunt, and Grant Cameron for the March Roundtable. Everyone else bailed. They had to go to sleep. But that's okay. That's okay. We are on the last hour. And we were talking about paranormal in general. So one of the points I wanted to bring up, Barrie, it irritates me now, and I've brought this up on the show before, but you have the ghost hunters. That's all fine and good. That's great. But what about the abductees? If you're calling yourself paranormal, it covers a large spectrum, not just ghosts and spirits and hauntings. And I brought this up in other groups before that. Sure, you can go in, you can pass over a spirit, great. You can take care of a haunting and bring their home peaceful again. But you can't do that for abductees. You can't stop abductions. I mean,
true, 100%.
We have a few times, but that depends on the race completely. Some races are weaker than others. Some races, you can back them off. You can stop the abduction. We've done it. But, overall, when you look at the big picture of it, you can't stop most of the abductions that are going on. So
you definitely cannot stop the abductions. Now, I think that sometimes, in some cases, the abductions can be brought on by the abductee more often and more frequency, and more frequently, which is something to look at. I don't know what Grant thinks about that, but it's something that looks at it. And also, you also have to remember that a lot of the people that have been abducted or anything else, and I don't mean to say this in a bad way. It's kind of like the Matrix. You take the red pill or the blue pill. A lot of people have something happen to them and they don't move forward. They want to go back to the way that they were, and even though you get upgraded or however you are, you've got to continue to flow and progress. Whatever happened to you yesterday, that was past, and now you're working in the future. It moves forward. Everything goes forward, and just like everyday life. So you have to deal with it and move forward. We help a lot of abductees out. We help a lot of people out in that manner to be able to sit down and talk to them and try to move them ahead to know that other people experience these type of things, and they're all out there. Mm-hmm. And yes, they do all talk about, which is bizarre, you'll talk about the black helicopters. You'll talk about the government watching them. And there are certain people that have certain experiences that, yes, the government wants to know, because what do they start talking about? They start talking about it being all connected, all one, all these things going together. And the next thing that happens is that you're getting interfered with not only as the case that, not to bring that case up too much, that we have in Kentucky, and I still work with this guy. There was some other element that was playing hardball. Mm-hmm. As you know, and was very interfering in that case, and still is to this day.
Right.
So what do you say to the Wilson document that says there's no abductions, or Kit Green saying in 2007 there's no abductions?
Yeah. I say they're fools.
I look at no abductions. That's no reported abductions.
Tell that to the abductees. That's what I say to them.
Yeah, there are so many cases that were before that and everything else, and I don't know. Was he just talking about the year 2007, that there was no abductions at all in that year?
Yeah.
No, it said there was. I can't remember what the statement was. It was we haven't developed any technology, or we've come up against a brick wall with the technology. We can't figure it out, and there are no abductions. And Kit Green had said the same thing earlier, And of course, it seems like a stupid statement, but then when you start looking at it, then you start going like, what are they really getting at? Because that's the highest level guy. That was the
Kid Green
the
was,
intelligence guy couldn't get the briefing, but the guy above him that got the briefing, that's all he would tell him. And I know the whole thing with that's my belief, is that the government knows an awful lot less than people think they know in terms of technology. It's all bravado. We've got this, we've got that. I mean, I've dealt with, Ron Pandolfi at the CIA and these guys, and I really think when it's got to do with technology, like when you're talking about the craft, where it's way bigger on the inside than the outside, anybody tells me that the military has developed that, as it needs their head examined. There's no way. It's so far beyond. They're talking nuts and bolts and anti-gravity and stuff. They have no idea, because this stuff is going to be, it's going to be a lot less physical than people think it is. Like, you fly the craft with your mind and stuff like that. It's so advanced that I don't think the government has what they're claiming they have. And
right, and Grant, I agree with you 100%, because when they are so interested in certain abductees and certain things that happen, and you know that just as well as I do and other people do. Yeah. And, so they're always out looking and investigating that part of that thing. And there are certain ones that, there is parts of the puzzle that they're looking for. They don't have all of it, and the abductees and the people who are having these experiences, they want to know why they're picked. Why are they picked? Why is this happening?
I think part of it too. Anyone who said there's no such thing as abduction or there's no abductions going on is a fool. But when you look at it, and it's coming from a government source, if the government comes out and says, "Yeah, abductions are happening," look at the population. Population's freaking out over a virus that is killing people. I'm not downplaying that, but if they came out and said, yes, there's aliens, they're here, they're abducting people, the manner of panic you would probably see in the population is probably what they're trying to stop. Just playing devil's advocate here. The government can't, but the government can't admit when there's something out of their control.
Yeah.
And
they are definitely control freaks, let me tell you.
Right. But the fact that there's abductions going on that the government can't stop, the people look to the government as the end all. So if there's aliens taking people and the government's saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do nothing about it," I think.
Well,
people
you
freak
can't
out.
just go and run to the Geneva Convention and say, "Hey, I'm being abducted, fix it." Okay, there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, you could.
Yeah.
Or they don't know. Ass out, but you could.
Right. And I think you're right, Grant. They don't know. So
that's what people have to realize with the CIA and all these things. People think, well, they're these all-powerful guys that got all this information. The only place they get the information from is from the people. That's why they watch. That's when a lot of experiences say, "Oh, the government's following me," and I'm going, "Are you surprised?" I mean, like even Betty Andreas, she brought that up.
Exactly right.
And I said to her, Betty Andreas' husband, I said, "Well, does Betty know? Are they showing Betty how the craft flies?" And she does all these diagrams. I said, "Well, are you surprised that we'd be following her around then? They're trying to figure it out the same as you." And in fact, I think Pandolfi had actually said, because we cannot control the phenomena, we have to watch those who are affected by the phenomena. Because the government ain't, the aliens or whoever it is isn't talking to them. So they've got to watch the experiencers and figure out, why is this person having contact? How are they having contact? Are they being told any technologies? That's where the MILAB stuff comes from, where they're grabbing people, re-abducting them, and trying to find out, what did they tell you? What, how does this work? Why are they here? Because that's where your intelligence comes from, is from the ground.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. All they're doing is being boots on the ground investigators dealing with. They're taking the information that is being given to them by the experiencer themselves.
Right.
And that's golly, look about it. I mean, I don't know if you even remember, I've been in MUFON for a long time. They had the Ambia program. They've had all kinds of different stuff, the UFO Coalition. You've had all kinds of different things. But, whatever happened to the Ambia program? What happened to some of these things that they were actually had devices that were measuring things that were with abductees, and they left at their homes and they were doing that? I mean, you still don't see reports on some of that information that was done on it. no statistical analysis was ever done on it, or we haven't seen it. So maybe someone has. I don't know. But there's so much. Golly, when you look at it, all I can tell you that is it's happening. It's out there. Yes, I'm an experiencer. Yes, I've had several experiences. I know I've dealt with a lot of them that have. And when you do, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see some strange things coming out after you.
Oh, absolutely. So, Grant,
everybody has experience.
I have a question specifically for you. You've been in the presidential side of UFOs.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite president?
I guess it would be Reagan. I liked the guys that were into UFOs. Obama was big into UFOs. Reagan was big into UFOs. Yeah, those would be the two. Reagan would be probably the key guy who I would follow.
Oh, absolutely. I'd agree with you. So, why Obama?
Well, Obama was heavily into it. I mean, the whole To the Stars thing, I don't care what anybody says. I wrote Managing Magic 6 months before Tom DeLonge went public. I exposed Tom DeLonge. I exposed Jim Semivan. I'm the first guy to name him. And basically, that was all set up by Obama through John Podesta. If you remember the story with Tom DeLonge saying that he phones up John Podesta, this is in 2015, and says, I got this deal. I want to, do this program. You guys aren't getting the message out, and I can do it. I've got all these, Twitter followers and Instagram followers and all this kind of stuff. And then John's sitting there listening, and then DeLonge says at the end, John doesn't say anything. He says, I'm pretty busy. Can you phone me back in a couple of months? And he goes, I just blew that off. The guy's not going to listen to me, whatever. And then John Podesta phones Tom DeLonge back and says, oh, this is very important. I want you to fly to Washington right now. So the whole Tom DeLonge thing, no matter what anybody says, it all happened under John Podesta and Hillary Clinton and all this. It was going to be rolled out. And then what happened is Hillary lost the election. And then that's what it took them 9 months to redo the thing, because the WikiLeaks exposed their three top guys, the head of Lockheed Skunk Works and the two generals. And so it all came under Obama. Obama was big time into this thing, but it's like people always get mistakes where, like Jimmy Carter, everybody thinks, well, Jimmy Carter didn't do anything. He made this promise and stuff, and he didn't do anything. It's not true. He did all sorts of stuff, but when you're the president of the United States, you cannot have your fingerprints on this thing. Bill Clinton used to call it the tar baby story. You touch it, it's like the tar baby. You get stuck to it, and then you try to get away, and the more you push it away, the more you get stuck to it. You can't, if you're the president of the United States, if you don't have the answers, you have to get to him as plausible deniability. So if anything happens good in the economy, the president is the great guy. He solved all this stuff. But if there's anything that's bad, then it's like, no, the president's not involved. He doesn't know, and it's plausible deniability. So they keep him away from the subject on purpose, so that because if everybody suddenly realizes that the president of the United States is running the cover-up, because all security clearances, all security is executive order. It's not a law. It's run through the executive office of the president. So all the top secret security clearances, all this stuff, everything that's determined to be secret is coming through the president of the United States. He's the guy running the cover-up. And if suddenly everybody finds out it's the president that's running the cover-up, well, everybody knows where he lives, everybody knows his phone number, and he gets inundated with 3,000 camera guys standing there asking questions, and it all unravels. So you play this sort of idea that the president's some idiot, he doesn't know what's going on, and this kind of stuff. And the president does, they keep him away from it, but he has to green light everything that happens. The disclosure stuff was happening big time in the Obama administration, and they couldn't do it publicly, so they go in through the back door, and that's why they use Tom DeLonge, because it gives plausible deniability to everybody in the government. It's Tom DeLonge that's doing it, and actually it's people. Tom DeLonge is the puppet, and there's a bunch of people behind him telling exactly what he's to do and how they're going to unravel this thing. I firmly believe the government is unraveling little bits and pieces of the story, and with the plausible deniability, they can control how fast it comes out.
Well,
right,
Obama,
and I've got to agree with that, Grant, 100%.
Obama
100%.
was willing to do things that other presidents weren't, like even just personally. Will Smith and his family took a tour through the White House.
Yeah.
And he actually admitted to Jaylin, he said that Jaylin asked him, are aliens real?
Yeah.
And he said to him, I cannot confirm that. they were standing in the Situation Room, and
Yeah.
he said, I cannot confirm that. But then he leaned in close to Jaden and said, but if they were and there was a situation with them, this is where we'd talk about it.
Right?
Yeah. And so he hides. That's the thing, is Obama would hide it with jokes. It's the same as when he goes on the Ellen show. No, he goes on Kimmel. And if you remember, I don't know if you saw the analysis was done of him. So they put Bill Clinton on the Kimmel show first. And then the guy from Hollywood, his name always escapes me, but he does he used to work for the FBI, and he does the analysis of Bill Clinton swallowing and all this sort of stuff. And you can tell Bill Clinton's sort of making up stories about the Roswell thing. You know, he says I didn't know what was going on. I'm sorry, I was cut out of the loop and stuff like that. And I looked at the Roswell files, and there was no crash at Roswell. We can't have it both ways. You can't say I had the Roswell files and then say you don't know what's going on. And so when Obama goes on there, that's when Kimmel says to him, well, you know they're going to be watching you. They're going to be watching everything you're doing. And he knows because they did this analysis of Bill Clinton on there. And every time you swallow, and when they ask Obama the question, okay, what did you do? When you became president, did you go and look at the profiles? That's when he says, well, I can't say anything. He's breathing. He's hyperventilating. He's breathing 42 times a minute at that point when he gets asked that question. And that's the whole deal. So he has this inside, but he has to do it. And so he goes on the Kimmel show a second time. I don't know if you saw this one, where he goes on there and he does this joke. He doesn't have to do this. This is the whole point. He doesn't have to do this. And he's raising money for AIDS or something like that. And he says, if you send in money, I'll release the files to Kimmel. And then the guy off camera goes, you can't do that. That's classified. And he goes, what? No, I can't do it. I got the records right in my desk here. And he does the joke thing. So he's telling you what's going on, but nobody takes him seriously because he's joking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So my second part of that question, where does Trump fit into the whole UFO scenario?
He was contacted when Hillary Clinton didn't bring up the subject. She was asked about it 3 times. So when she did it the 3rd time, when the New York guy with the morning show asked her about it, and then the guy said, I've been abducted, and she's sitting right beside him and goes, oh yeah, okay, she just goes along with it. Yeah, you've been abducted. And so the New York Times picks it up. It's the same as the To the Stars story. As soon as the New York Times picks it up, then suddenly everybody says, oh, this is for real. So they talk about her talking about UFOs, and that's when the reporter from the New York Times, the same one that John Podesta copies, when he does that famous tweet in 2014, the day he leaves the Obama administration, he says, once again, which means I tried to tell Bill Clinton and he wouldn't listen to me. Once again, my biggest failure of 2014 was not getting UFO disclosure. So he basically says, I tried it with Bill Clinton and Bill we wouldn't move it out. And then I talked to Obama, and Obama wouldn't move it out. And I'm just saying that I actually talked to Obama about disclosure. He copies Marie Dowd from the New York Times. And it took about a year, and then both Stephen Bassett and I were working on it. It's like, why would he copy Marie Dowd on this tweet? And the thing was that Marie Dowd, in 1997, when they came out with the second bizarre story about the Roswell, the first one was 1995, when Bill Clinton saw the Roswell report and said, oh, it's just a mogul balloon, it's all garbage, whatever. And Bill Clinton goes and makes this famous speech in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where he says, if the U.S. Air Force did recover bodies, they didn't tell me about it, and I want to know. And in the first report, there's no bodies. There's no mention of the gray bodies. And so they have to do the second report in 1997, and that's when they have to do the thing about the body. And they come up with this bizarre thing about, we dropped dummies in 1953, and people mistook them for being little 4-foot beings in 1947. And Marie Dowd from the New York Times writes an article. Most people don't know this. She wrote an article, and she says, that absolutely proves that this thing's for real. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So when John Podesta does the famous tweet, he copies Marie Dowd. And you can see this inside baseball stuff going on behind there. So John was big time in. He's a big open government type guy. But the only thing, I filed all the FOIs with the Clinton administration and with the library. The only one that they wouldn't give me, that they fought, and I went to an appeal. I lost the appeal. Was on John Podesta's 50th birthday party in the White House. This is 1997, I think. They have a birthday party for John Podesta's 50th birthday party, and he was known as the X-Files guy in the Clinton White House. So every week he'd go home and watch X-Files. Didn't matter what was going on. He kept on up every episode. He had all the X-Files stuff in his ante room outside his office and stuff like that. And so they have this birthday party for him in the White House, and Bill and Hillary dress up like the X-Files, the characters of the X-Files, and they come out and they have this party. So they had a videotape, and they had 83 photographs. And I went after that, and they would not release it. They said it's personal stuff. I said it can't be personal. He's a member of the government. You can't be using a personal exemption. And it was government video stuff. It was government paid for. It was in the White House. It's a public event. And I fought it, and they blocked me, and they would not allow that out. But that comes to this whole idea that it sort of puts the president in the crosshairs, and suddenly he's got to answer all these questions. Why are you dressing up like the X-Files? Why are you and Hillary doing this kind of stuff? But Bill was big in it, and Podesta was the main thing. He wanted to do it, but you can't do it publicly, because if they want to disclose, they stand up the CIA director or the president and they tell you. But if they want to sort of disclose, leak it out, you do it through these indirect leaks with phony documents, with word of mouth and stuff like that. And there is a pattern to how they're doing this, and it's a slow drip disclosure, and they've been doing it since the 1970s when they did the UFO documentary, 1975 UFOs, Past, Present, and Future, where my friend Bob Amiger was told, we want you to do this documentary, we want you to hide it. And he was given all these films. He was told about the CIA channeling an alien. The top CIA guy told him the story. There was a CIA guy on the set the entire time they taped it. And you see this program that the government is disclosing it, but it's the whole thing of you've got to protect the stuff you don't know, and you've got to protect the story so it doesn't unravel too fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree with that.
Absolutely.
Hey, Brad, let me ask you, Brad, you mind if I ask you a question? You're talking about ATIP, and you talk about To the Stars Academy and all that stuff, which is basically seems to be formed of the same thing. And I find it odd I think it was this week, I saw a new article about ATIP, Harry Reid, Bigelow, Buffon, UFO Coalition, and everything else. What's your take on that? That was back in 2008, 2009.
Oh, you mean the whole ATIP thing, or
that whole deal with Harry Reid and Bigelow, Buffon, all that stuff, all together in one.
Well, what you got to remember is that Bob Bigelow is a big key player in this thing. That Bob Bigelow's son, he died. Now the rumor was he committed suicide or whatever, and he became obsessed with life after death. He put in $3.7 million to the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, for a consciousness chair. Not UFOs, consciousness chair. And he was always into it, and he had the money. And what he would do is he'd bring in these Avery guys. So Kit Green, John Alexander, Hal Puthoff, all these top guys. And what these guys, I identified them as the Avery in the 1990s. And these were guys who had some contact with the UFO phenomena, and they were talking to each other because they had security clearances, and they were just trying to figure out the rest. So like Kit Green, for example, was never given a briefing on the alien autopsy, and he's a physiologist, so he wanted to have that. He could never get read in on it, and so they're all trying to figure it out. They're working with each other. So Bob Bigelow starts calling them in the early 2000s, and he's paying them, I think, $3,000 a day per diem, $3,000 a day, and he's bringing them in 6 times a year. And these guys are working on. That's where the Wilson document comes from. That's where the alien autopsy document comes from. These were NIDS reports. They were working on the Holloman Air Force Base film. They were working on cattle mutilations. They were working on black triangles. They were just trying to figure out all this stuff, and Bigelow was funding all this stuff. So when it comes to 2007. They realized, and that's why I say about Skinwalker Ranch. Skinwalker Ranch really has nothing to do with UFOs. It's got to do with paranormal phenomena. What they had going on there was apport phenomena. There was 20 different apport things. Like the woman brings in the groceries and puts the groceries away, goes to the next room, comes back, and the groceries are back in the bag. And the cows are found in this trailer, and that's all apport stuff. It happens around experiencers and physical mediums. Happens all the time. It's part of the paranormal phenomena. So they were interested in that. And the head guy from Defense Intelligence Agency goes to, he's interested, he hears about this, and he goes there and he sees this infinity sign, this metal infinity sign that nobody else sees as soon as he gets on the ranch, and that's where the funding. So DIA is going in there, but DIA is not interested in UFOs. DIA is interested in how the heck do you put 4 bulls inside a locked trailer. It's military. It's trying to figure out how do you do this stuff. If you can make stuff disappear and reappear and go through walls, because you look at the reports, they talk about stuff going through walls. That's what they were interested in.
Well, can you imagine the combat concept with that?
Oh yeah, exactly. That's what.
Well, using portals are portals. Kind of, yeah.
And it's so it all comes down to like what's happening now is they're going to the Armed Services Committee and to the Intelligence Committee. So what happened in Podesta's day, Podesta was working with Leslie Kean, and Leslie Kean put out the book about the generals. And what they put in, you go look at the book. What the book says is, we should look into UFOs because it may be a threat to airline traffic. Well, I guess they went to Congress, and Congress just laughed and said, get out and don't let the door hit you, where on your way out. And it was just like crazy stuff. So what has happened now is they realize that these are guys like Hal Puthoff, all these guys like Gary Nolan's an experiencer, Jim Semivan's an experiencer. All these guys have had the beings in their room. They're just trying to figure this thing out. But you need funding, and in order to get funding, that's where they went into this threat thing. That unless you put it as a threat, you're not going to get any money. And if I don't know if you've interviewed Melinda Leslie, but Melinda Leslie was contacted by Jim Semivan, same as I was contacted by some of these guys. And what they're doing is they're leaking it through certain people. So Jim Semivan goes to Melinda Leslie. She's the only one that he's talking to, and she told me, and I knew he was coming, and I gave her some questions and stuff like that. And she said to Jim Semivan, she said, "Okay, Jim, what could I do to really get you upset that you would never talk to me again?" And he said 4 times. He said, "Mess with the money." So what they've done is they've gone and they want money to research. They want to move it out of the black world because in the black world it's all stovepiped and they're not getting anywhere. That's the whole thing that was in the Wilson document is they have no idea how this stuff works. They shut it down in '89 because it's all got to do with consciousness. And you have all these people. You take a difficult problem and you break it into little sections and you give it to this guy and everybody's got a piece, but nobody's talking to each other. So they didn't figure out anything of how this thing works. So what they're trying to do is get it out of the black world and get into the white world, but in order to get money, you have to have a threat because nobody's going to care in Congress and give you $1 billion unless you have some sort of need to fill. If it's just an interest sake, who cares? We're the Appropriations Committee. We're the Senate Intelligence Committee. We're the Armed Services Committee. We could not care less. That's not our bailiwick. Go talk to somebody else. So you have to have a threat that all they're doing is they're doing this thing to get money.
Yeah.
And they'll all walk away with suitcases full of money. That's what it's all about. It's about patents. That's where these guys, they call them now the Cosmic Club. There's about 50 of these guys, according to Jim Semivan. They're in the background. And these guys, they're all quiet. They say, we can't talk about it because of our careers. Baloney. They've all got patents. They all realize that if they can crack this thing, this is big money. So they're all working with each other behind the scenes. And it's like I call them MJ12 2.0. I mean, so what? You guys figured it out. Too bad. It's got to come to the people. And so whatever leaks out from them, I'll tell people. I don't care. I think the people have to know. But in America, it comes down to making money. It comes down to weapons or people with patents making money.
Money. Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the Cosmic Club. Tell us a little bit more about the Cosmic Club.
Well, it started with the Avery. This is what's happening. As I say to people, it goes back right to the 1970s where this documentary was being put out by Bob Emenegger, who's an advertising executive at Gray Advertising. And then once the people who are interested that have had some contact, like, Hal Puthoff or Kit Green or John Alexander, they find out, there's this documentary. Let's go find out because they've got some answers. They've got a contact inside the government. So that happened, and then Bill Moore in the 1980s starts the Avery. So Bill Moore, it's the same Tom DeLonge. It's identical. So Bill Moore cracks the Roswell case. Nobody knew about Roswell before 1980 when he wrote the Roswell incident. And he has these military people. He's got actual witnesses, and everybody's going, "Oh my goodness!" He made like $1 million on this book and sold 1 million copies. It was unbelievably big. And so they come to him as soon as and Bill Moore had a big ego. So they come to him and they say, "You're the only guy who knows what you're talking about." And then he gets a second phone call from a guy from Offutt Air Force Base. "Oh, you're the only guy who knows what you're talking about. We'd like to help you." And so it's like the way it works is if you've got something big and you make a breakthrough in the UFO community, they have 2 options. They can either go and kill you, or they can come to you and say, you would like some help? Would you like us to help you? And would you like to go have a tour of the CIA? And everybody's got an ego. We'll fall for this. And so Bill Moore had 24 sources that were with him that were feeding him material. And it was partly true, partly false. He was told that right from the beginning, and he puts this stuff out. And then along comes Tom DeLonge, and it's the same story. It's like, everybody says Tom DeLonge put it together. Tom DeLonge did not put it together. He had an invite to go to Lockheed Skunk Works. They had a barbecue, and they said, "We'd like you to introduce the president of Lockheed Skunk Works." So, well, why would you introduce the head of Lockheed Skunk Works from a rock star? Because they're setting him up. So he says, if I can talk to the guy for 5 minutes. He ends up at Area 51 inside this skiff, and he's talking to the head scientist, and he's talking before Robert Weiss, the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, comes out. He's talking to the head scientist, and the head scientist says, "How does it work? How does it get here? That's all I want to know." And then he says, "Oh, I think it has to do with consciousness." And he said, suddenly the head scientist for Lockheed is saying, "Now you're talking." And he couldn't shut him up. For 45 minutes he talks. And then they sit there, and that's who gives them the pitch. "You guys aren't getting the message out. The young people aren't listening to you. You're trying to get this out. I can help you." And they go, "Oh, this might actually work." And they send him, they say, "Oh, we need you to talk to these two guys in Washington." He goes to these two intelligence guys. They send him to NASA. He gets linked up at NASA. He goes to the general in Wyoming or in Colorado. And then they send him to the general in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Then they link him up with Podesta. And all those people were given to him, the same as Bill Moore. And it's like they're directing the story. So that's why I called the book Managing Magic. It's all the same thing. All the paranormal phenomena are the same thing. In fact, in the CIA, they call it phenomenology. It's all the same thing. And you've got to manage that story. You can't kill people. You can't do that kind of stuff. You manage it, and you get intelligence from these people as to who's being contacted, what's the contact, how does this thing work, how does the consciousness thing work, can we build weapons out of it, have the Russians got it, and all that kind of stuff. That's why they're so interested in the whole phenomena. And you have to deal with the people who have all the contacts inside the field in order to find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, if anyone from the Cosmic Club is listening, me and Eric would prefer option number 2.
I want to be invited to a barbecue.
Yeah.
As long as I'm
well, Semivan says there's 50. We sort of know who some of them are. Like Diane Pasulka was sort of interacting with them. There's a guy at Harvard. There's a professor at Harvard. There was what's his name from Rice University, and they're all sort of like sort of on call type thing where they want to, because that's the thing is if you suddenly get an interaction with the government where they say, "Oh, we'd like you to help. We'll give you some information." Most people will fall for that. They'll say, "Oh, I'm going to get the inside. The guy's going to tell me what's going on." And that's what they've sort of done with these people is there's a potential that they may get a patent out of it, or they can be advisors on a certain field, or you can find out what does the government know on consciousness? What does the government know about metamaterials? So if you're working on metamaterials and you get an offer from the government to work with their guys on metamaterials, everybody's going to go for it. And according to Jim Semivan, there's at least 50 of these people, but it's the same idea of the Avery. Avery was 20 people, and now it's 50 people, and it's all secretive, and everybody's saying, "Oh, we could be threatened, or our careers are on the line, or whatever." And I say, no, I don't think it's really that. It's more this thing where you're like it's like a monopoly. 50 people have this company, and we're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to make money out of it, and end of story.
Mm-hmm. So I have one last question. We're coming down to the last 20 minutes here.
Yeah.
But have we seen a rise? And I asked this last week, but I want to hear Grant's perception of this as well. Have we seen a rise in UFO activity or paranormal activity in general since the start of this virus going
on? I'm not sure of the virus. In the last 10 years, absolutely. That's why I keep making this point where the veil is very thin. I mean, there's these people like... Because I'm a big experiencer guy, I get a lot of people. I get a lot of people coming to me with stories, and I interview a lot of people. And the one I did today is the 6th light language one I've got in the last couple of years, where these people suddenly start talking light language. Or you got Mary Rodwell with these 7, 8, 9-year-old kids who are talking these weird alien languages, and some of them can speak 20 languages. And I said, 10 years ago, even I wouldn't have believed that. There's no way. And suddenly, boom, 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 these people are coming one after another. Or the people flying the ship. 14% of all people, according to the Free Survey, say they've flown the flying saucer. I didn't get my first one till 2013. And when the woman told me, she was in her 70s, the woman that told me she'd flown the flying saucer, I was ready to say to her, you are absolutely insane, lady. I mean, I just could not believe that. And when I asked her, how do they do it? That's when she said, oh, you use your mind. It's flown with consciousness. Right. And that's why they put me together with her, because I'd gotten a consciousness download, and I'd given a lecture on consciousness. So they started linking me up. I've got over 50 people now. I've got a 747 United Airlines pilot. I've got a retired U.S. Air Force colonel that's flown the ship, and everybody says exactly the same thing. And so that's where I think we go in terms of research, is you've got to listen to these people, that when 40% of all people say one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. I think people are totally insane if you're not at least going to try to talk to that person and find out what it is. Or 42% say, I have mathematical, scientific, or technical material in my head that I did not learn in school. And they believe they were given it by these beings. And so we're getting this material given to us, and everybody's saying, oh, it's anecdotal, you can't prove it. And it's like, well, that's the only place that to me, that you're going to go, because these people have so much material, especially when you get to the thing about flying the craft. If you're going to make up a story, that's not something you're going to say, oh, I used my mind and I flew it around with my mind and the craft became me and I was the craft and the craft is alive. That's just nonsense stuff. But all 50, I've never had a witness say anything different. Everybody says exactly the same thing.
And I'll agree with you, because I have come up with some amazing things with a lot of the witnesses that I've talked to, saying the same thing. Some of them get. I have actually known somebody that was not very well educated, didn't know anything. But if he started talking about magnetics and talking about crafts, my gosh, that guy knew everything there was to it, and it was just like a PhD. You know, here you go, and he just going. And just shoot it out to you. Yeah. And, you know, everybody has a certain piece of the puzzle. Yeah. You know, and we have, there's been so many nights at my home that my wife wakes up and she goes, would you stop that? You're talking in some kind of weird language. I don't even know what the hell you're doing, you know? And that's just that's the way that it is. And it's, but it's, you see it all the time in each person. And it is true. It's a piece of a puzzle that everybody's been given. Yeah. And golly, if we ever got the opportunity to get them all together to be able to find that piece, put those puzzles together, we'd be way farther away than we are today. And
the other good thing about it is, unlike the government, because I've dealt with the top people around in the government that knew what was going on, they're not going to tell you. I mean, they may know, but they're not going to tell you. But if you get an experiencer and they believe that you're going to listen to them, they'll tell you everything they know, literally everything they know. And so you can put these people together, and you can be as skeptical as you want. You can give lie detectors. I don't care what you do, but at least talk to these people, because I'm just blown away by the amount of material. I had the one woman come up to me in California. I gave a lecture on these download thing, that people are getting these downloads and stuff that they'd gotten. And it happens the same in like Einstein's was a download. The quantum atom by Bohr was a download. The uncertainty principle from Heisenberg was a download. All this stuff popped into people's heads. And so I was giving this lecture, and this woman comes, she shows me her cell phone. She says, look at this. And it's got all these mathematical equations, and it's like 25 pages long. And I said, oh, you wrote this? And she said, yeah. And I said, you got it in a download? She said, yep. And she says, I'm a secretary. I've never taken science. And I was blown away.
Yeah, exactly. And fortunately, I have had the same kind of experiences. Yeah. And then I have also seen people that have written in binary code and trying to and sent that to be analyzed through several different sources. Yeah. And one of them was actually addresses and names of people. This person wrote down ones and zeros, and it was addresses of people throughout the whole world. Now, were they all abductees? Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Even if you take a Jim Peniston,
right?
His download experience with the binary code, they're doing a second book just on the binary code. because they found all these inside things. It means this. It means this. It has all this mathematical stuff. And there's another guy writing most of the book for him. But to write an entire thing on that one thing of codes, which before we thought it was just the 7 locations or 6 locations, whatever it was around the world. But no, it's got all these complex inside stories and inside mathematical stuff. And they're writing an entire book on that one download binary code message.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's where we can learn, because you can look at UFO sightings and all this kind of stuff, even the medals. I mean, you can look at it, and all you're really going to be able to determine is, yeah, something weird is going on, and it's probably not us. But in terms of finding out beyond the fact that it's for real, and I had the advantage, because I never really got into, trying to prove that UFOs exist, because I knew. I mean, I was so close in '76. I was going to jump on the thing. I was that close to the thing. And so I knew it was real. And when they rejected my manuscript, all I was interested in is somebody's got to know what's going on here. And in the end, I discovered it's the experiencers. It's the people that have been taken aboard the ship with the abductions and given all this material. That's where the answer is. I'm firmly convinced, because the metals. I am too. You can take all the metals you want, and all it's going to determine is, yeah, that metal's pretty weird. We probably didn't change the isotopes or whatever it is. But in terms of telling where it comes from, why they're here, what the message is, it doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you, yeah, something weird is going on.
Yeah, and
and I think meditation is the first step towards that consciousness.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. That's the thing is I do a lot of stuff on right brain, left brain, where I talk about these modalities. So whether you're talking tarot card reading or channeling or doing dowsing or anything like that, it's always the same thing. It's the ability to shut down the rational, analytical left brain, because that's where the noise is. And that's where you get people with head injuries who suddenly be able to do mathematics and stuff, or people who do ayahuasca, where the ego is shut down. That's the left brain. It completely shuts down, and they suddenly say, oh my God, I suddenly realized everything was alive and connected and everything was one and stuff.
Right.
Or Edgar Mitchell coming back, where he's sitting there, he's just sort of dazing out like I did in 2012, and he's sitting there watching the Earth from his spaceship, and suddenly he gets the samadhi experience where he's one with the universe. And that's the thing, is once you shut the left brain down, and you can do it through meditation, you can do it through hypnosis, you can do it through psychedelics, you can do it through a head injury, you can do it all these different ways. You've got to get rid of this. The signal is there for everybody. Everybody's got the signal, and that's when you see aliens don't have any emotions. They don't have that left brain thing. Or if you take a look at the implants, according to Roger Lear and Daryl Sims, they say that they have 250 cases of implants, and they're all on the left side of the body. The left side of the body is run by the right brain. That's the female brain, and it indicates that whatever the implants are about, it's got nothing to do with your rational, analytical left brain. It's got to do with the other side. They're tapped into the right brain, and when you can shut down the left brain and get rid of the noise, you can pick up the signal, and you can do that through meditation.
See, I'm screwed. So we've decided Cole's going to be the one to fly the craft, because I'm just screwed on that aspect.
Oh, heck no.
Hell yeah.
Most of the ones flying the craft are women. I'll tell you that. Most of them are, and they're taught as children. They always tell this story that they're put in circles.
No,
I can't even drive a car. I ain't flying a craft.
So we're coming down to the last 10 minutes. So, Grant, where can we find your books?
My website is beyondpresidentialufo.com.
Okay.
All the books that I've published, and I've helped other people publish their books. I try to show people how to self-publish. If I see somebody's got a really good story, and I always when I get a real good experience, I always say to them, "You wrote that down yet?" And they go, "No." And I go, "Just write it down for your kids. I mean, you can make one book. It costs you $4. At least write it down for your kids so they'll know, like 500 years from now, because you're going to be a hero 500 years from now. Everybody's going to think, oh, these people were so lucky. They were there when it all started." And so I have my books, and I have my assistant is a channeler, really good channeler, and she tells the whole story of how she learned to do this. It was really bizarre, and she linked up with me, and so I have that. But I have about 6 books coming out, but I'm really not, because a lot of people don't read books anymore. I do a lot of YouTube stuff. I do a lot of my interviews with these experiencers who've flown the ship and stuff like that. It's my White House UFO YouTube channel, and that's where I do, not every day I do an interview, but I'm chasing down a lot of people doing light language, flying the ship, mostly experiencers, And I'm also into physical mediumship because there's a real direct connection between physical mediumship and UFOs. In fact, the skull experiment, which is the most famous physical medium experiment in the world that happened in the 1990s in Great Britain, when they moved that to Spain, they started getting blue up here. So this alien looks like a gray, except he's completely blue, started appearing in the seances, and he would walk around and take people's hands and put them on his head. So that's where you get this crossover where physical mediums they're able to pop into the field. They're going into trance channels. And that's where I'm doing this DNA experiment where I'm going to maintain. And I think if it weren't for the virus, we would have done the experiment to confirm the experiment on June the 19th. But what we say is if you're a trance channeler or a trance medium or a multiple personality person, when your personality change, when your alter changes, when the consciousness changes and a walk-in comes in, like with Bashar or like a physical medium, the DNA will change. We're going to guarantee this, that it will change. It'll be completely different DNA, which indicates the world's going to stop rotating for 24 hours and everybody's going to go, what the hell is going on here? And it's the old idea that it's all consciousness, that your DNA is programmed by your consciousness, and when the entity changes, the consciousness changes.
Outstanding.
For those listeners who are looking for anything from him, if you just search his name, Grant Cameron, the fourth thing that pops up on Google is his personal website. So
excellent.
Yeah, and that's what my son says. My son, like you always find you find that your family's not into it. My son, lots of times people ask him, "What's your old man do for a living?" And he goes, "Put his name in Google," and walks away because he has no interest. Put his name in Google and walks away.
All right, so Barrie, where can we find Into the Fire and your group?
Into the Fire is on Blog Talk Radio. Night Stalkers Paranormal is we're still working on our website. We've taken it down and we're redoing it. You still find me as a Kentucky Truth Seeker on the Facebook, Barrie Gaunt, Kentucky Truth Seeker. All that is still out there. Octagon Hall. Still doing a lot with Octagon Hall, the historic place in Franklin, Kentucky. We're closed right now because of the virus, but we are keeping it open for groups that wanted to come in and have paranormal experiences as far as team hunts. I'll go down and open it up and let them come in there. So you can go to the website at www.octagonhallmuseum.com and go ahead and still reserve a spot for you. And that's about it.
All right, outstanding. So thanks, guys, for being on the show tonight. It was
absolutely
great roundtable.
For our listeners, don't forget to check out any of your S4 gear at s-4radio.com. And tonight's been a bit of a bittersweet night. It was awesome having these guys on the radio tonight, but we honestly shouldn't be here. We were supposed to be in Oregon this weekend.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the Oregon Growth Conference, which they canceled.
So, if any of our listeners maybe have a little bit of extra cash in the next coming weeks with the stimulus check, Oregon Ghost Conference, in order to continue doing what they're doing, they're looking for a little bit of help from you guys. So make sure you go down to their website, OregonGhostConference.org, and
help them out.
They're doing virtual badges, so give them a hand too.
And we will be there next year.
Yes, we will.
For sure.
As long as the world's still standing.
Yeah. So next week we are talking, we're putting our tinfoil hats on, and we are talking FEMA camps next week. Which, I don't know, we might all be one in by next week. I don't know. But anyway, we're talking FEMA camps for next week. So again, I got to give a shout out because we still have a constant listener in Saudi Arabia. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, we'll see you next week. Stay safe, stay isolated, and keep your eyes to the skies.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on S4, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. You can contact S4 through our website at www.s-4radio.com or on Facebook. Make sure you give us a like on our page and join the Forest Moon Paranormal group. If you are interested in advertising, take a look at our packages and contact Cole or Eric at 1-360-999-2830. Again, thank you. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.